Welcome to this week's episode of Campbell and Jones Meet the Monsters, the show where we chart the cinematic legacy of the great monsters. I'm John Campbell. With me, as always, Brendan Jones.
Hello. And with that one word, I have now spoken more dialogue than Christopher Lee does in the entirety of Dracula, Prince of Darkness.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
mean,
hey, John, how you doing? I'm sorry. We'll get into it. First, we should do the niceties. Everything good?
Everything's good with me. Everything good with you?
Everything is fine with me. And I am, regardless of snark, and regardless of what we'll talk about now for the next 8 hours, I was happy to re-enter the world of Dracula.
Yes.
I was happy to see, for as much screen time as I give him, Christopher Lee.
Yeah, I've got a time code on when he shows up in this movie.
Christopher goddamn Lee. Not many people know that was his middle name.
Yep. Yeah, that's a fact. Right on that birth certificate. They said it was blasphemous at the time, but his parents said, "We don't care."
That was a very good impression of what I'm sure his father sounded like. We don't care.
That's right.
He's a boy. He's going to be an actor.
Yeah. We have it
on the stage and screen.
He gonna be Dracula. I will say there definitely was a sense, even though maybe this is not the greatest outing for him as his character, it was like, oh, our boy is back.
Yeah. I mean, there's that. I think that sheer anticipation and joy carried me through rough patches, and there's plenty in this movie.
If this had come immediately on the heels of his first Dracula, I think I would have been more critical of it. But the fact that we've been starved for him for so long, there is a part of me that's just like, it's just nice to see him back in the Cape.
Yeah, 8 years. Yeah. And weirdly, in the terms of our podcast, it's only been a few weeks, but I feel like I've waited 8 years for him to come back.
I know, it is like, gee, when they start with their previously on Dracula, I was like, man, this feels like a lifetime ago.
They totally do.
Previously on Dracula.
Yeah, it's a weird. Well,
a lot of movies did that, and it continues into the 80s, because the one I always think of being Who I Am is Wrath of Khan. Or no, Search for Spock. That starts with Wrath of Khan. That starts with the end of Wrath of Khan, where you're like,
they really had to explain what was going on.
Every Rocky movie in the 80s always had a previously on Rocky. You had to.
It'd be great if it actually did just have like Stallone going previously. Oh, Rocky. Be the best thing ever.
I know. That would.
But when they made Dracula, or as we knew it, Horror of Dracula, they didn't see that they were doing a series. The series, was their Frankenstein stuff, and then of course with the Mummy, even though it's a different character each Mummy film, but they were like going, oh yeah, maybe we should return to that. Well, that was very smart, Hammer, but after 8 years, I have to admit, I was expecting that they would have perhaps come up with something a little better.
The big return of Dracula. Yeah, it's not really what this movie is. Is kind of
sadly
surprising.
Not much. But I've got a little bit of a backstory.
Effect. I will say on this one, just because the way these movies are available in such different capacities, stuff like that. Right. This one I actually have a Shout Factory collector's edition of. That has a half-hour documentary about the making of this movie that I watched.
Nice. So I want you to chime in where I don't have things.
They have a lot. They interview a lot of the actors as well. Well, I think the two actors who were still alive when they filmed the thing, and then a lot of film critics, and also just Mark Gatiss talks a lot.
Oh, nice.
Just going like, well, I'll tell you about Dracula. I remember seeing this one. Just like. I think it's just like Dracula fan Mark Gatiss.
Well, and again, one of these days I'll watch their Dracula. One of these days.
Oh, I like that Moffat and Gatiss Dracula.
I know. Yeah. I don't know. I worry. I fret.
I mean, it is their take on the material for sure.
It wasn't what I was hoping it would be when it was announced, but I've spoken on that. Like, their take on Sherlock of just updating the character and the storyline to the modern day worked really well. Loved it. I was hoping that's what they were going to do with Dracula, and then I was kind of glad they didn't because I wanted to do my own version of that. But
also maybe they kind of do.
I know. It jumps. There's a time jump. Shut up.
Which is cool for a character who's immortal, right? Is that you can do the modern day version while also saying that everything in the book happened.
Dude, he can also show up in AD 1972.
Oh, and he will. Not there yet. I really am excited. After two of these now sort of Victorian Dracula movies, I'm kind of ready for him to sink his teeth into AD 1972.
Some crazy batshit cool happening stuff coming down our bike. Well, I'll tell you what I know, and you chime in with what you know,
sure.
And we'll still never know the truth of what happened. But here we go. It's 1966, John. The age of Aquarius is at hand. What better time for the return of Dracula, the Prince of Darkness? Like a long, dark shadow across the ages, the Lord of the Vampires rises once more, leaving death in his wake. Such is the death of the fruitful collaboration that launched Hammer Films out of relative obscurity, the partnership of director Terrence Fisher and screenwriter Jimmy Sangster. This film marks the end of their working relationship, though both guys would continue to work for Hammer, and we will be talking about them in the podcast because they both came back to monster movies for Hammer, just not together.
Well, after the Munsters said that Sangster's scripts were too morbid for them, he had to come back.
I think he still hasn't made it out to Hollywood just yet, but I do love the idea of him just dabbling in early 60s TV.
I'm sorry, you can't have Wednesday Addams decapitating the neighbors. It's symbolism to show her angsty teenage rage.
You look at the Charles Addams strip, she does far worse than that.
I'm just being true to the source material.
Yes, what happened to being true to the source material? I ask you. So I would say that in the case of Fisher and Sangster, it is bittersweet that these two important figures in horror film history, the men who, with wit and audacity, reimagined the classic monsters for the more jaded post-war audience, would go out on this effort, which, as we'll talk about, I found serviceable enough, but lacking. Even with the return of the great Christopher Lee to the title role 8 years after his debut as the Count. And it is kind of surreal to think that this is just his second outing as this character that we associate with him for the rest of time. Yep. This is just number 2. It's also just the second Dracula film Hammer did. Brides of Dracula being like this cousin, an offshoot.
Right, yeah. It's a Van Helsing movie.
It really is, and I got no problem with that.
Oh no!
Unfortunately,
this movie could have used a little Professor Van Helsing, in my opinion.
If you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Though it's all speculation on my part, since all of my sources are equally vague, I get the feeling there was trouble behind the scenes. Indications such as Sangster changing his screenwriting credit to his pseudonym, John Sansom. That's never a good sign. The absence of Peter Cushing's Van Helsing, as we were just saying.
They don't bring anything up about that in the documentary, which that was kind of what I was hoping to see, was if anybody talked about.
They didn't?
They don't have an explanation as to why Cushing's not there.
All I could gather is the safe response is, well, the man was very busy. He was just booked.
I will say,
and the other is he was a stickler on quality control, and it's possible that he was like going, this is dreadful. If Chris says he's going to do it, great, but I don't want to be in it.
This documentary is very loving of the movie and very them going, it's an unsung gem, and a lot of the actors going, oh, Terrence Fisher was a true gentleman on the set, and we had a good laugh every day. It was a lot of that kind of stuff.
I actually believe all of that. I don't think all that is hype. And I think everyone was very gentlemanly and cool and delightful, and they all sound just
They talk about we'd be laughing right up until that red light came on, when we'd get very serious.
I'd say another sign that things were maybe not so hunky-dory is the wasted return of Christopher Lee to the role with scant screen time and no dialogue. And on that point, here's something directly from the film's wiki page. Said Christopher Lee, quote, "I didn't speak in that picture. The reason was very simple. I read the script and saw the dialogue. I said to Hammer, if you think I'm going to say any of those lines, you're very much mistaken, unquote. But then, screenwriter Jimmy Sangster disputed that account in his memoir, Inside Hammer, writing that, quote, vampires don't chat, so I didn't write him any dialogue. Christopher Lee has claimed that he refused to speak the lines he was given. So you can take your pick as to why Christopher Lee didn't have any dialogue in the picture, or you can take my word for it. I didn't write any. Unquote.
They do talk about this in the documentary. The evidence they have is that the lines that Lee mentioned as examples of what he didn't want to say, he actually does end up saying in some of the other Dracula movies. So people think that perhaps of the 7 movies he made for Hammer's Dracula, he may be misremembering what was in what script exactly.
I actually do buy that, but it does seem strange that he would sign on to a film where they basically said you have no dialogue.
Yeah.
At that stage in his career, seems weird, and that's why I say we'll probably never know.
Right.
I mean, there's no doubt money involved, but
Sure.
crazy money. But why? Why bring him back?
And then
that's how you're.
Then there's a lot of film historians and critics, and they're going, "Well, the reason Dracula doesn't speak in the movie is that he's just been born of blood." And it's like, he's, at this point, he's not human enough to have spoken. And you're just like, yeah, I can come up with that shit too, man.
Yeah, we are basically seeing 2 days out of Dracula's undead.
Right.
It's like it's not a long period of time, so sure I could buy that maybe.
Yeah.
But like he's risen from a Lazarus pit. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Now we're talking. He does have the crazy eyes throughout the movie.
He does. Yeah. And I would buy that theory too. And Terrence Fisher himself would say things like, "Well, he's almost not even a sentient thing in this. He's a force of evil and sexuality."
Yeah, they quote Fisher in the documentary exactly. Yeah, and the big thing on there's a lot. I don't know if you get into this. They talk a lot about the lesbian undertones of this movie in the documentary.
No, I wasn't going to bring that up until it got really hot. But yes, I've certainly read about that. It's where I think mainly Barbara Shelley, who's one of the lead actresses, said that a lot when being interviewed about it, because it was just, for that time, a newish kind of take. And I certainly know where Hammer goes with lesbian vampires, but here I'd say really the take is just once you are a vampire, the idea becomes all of your morality, all of your inhibitions are gone.
Right.
So she is, of course, kind of being seductive toward her female friend, but or sister-in-law, but essentially what she's doing is just she's trying to get prey. I mean, I don't think it's really about sex.
There is a film analyst or whatever in the documentary says there is no better example of a horror movie being about the repressed sexuality of this era.
Well, they do. I mean, Sangster, whether he was proud of the script or not, he's still a decent enough writer that there are levels.
Yep.
And that stuff is there, which I appreciate simply because there's not a lot of plot. But if there are levels to it like that,
but Sangster will always put in a little something for daddy.
He actually would. They didn't have highlighters back then, but he would underline things, and he would write SFD next to it, which they knew was code for something for daddy. Oh yes, every one of my scripts, you go through it, you'll see plenty of SFDs.
And double D's.
Oh, that came later. Twins of evil, anyone? Okay. So
I love that we've just made Sangster this like horny pervert who's obsessed with blood and like darkness.
I mean, he's one of the responsible figures for directing Hammer that way, but I can't say that was due to his actual predilections. It's just funny.
Discovered the pulp detective novels that he wrote later on in the late 60s, early 70s. I have not read them yet.
Did he have a recurring character?
He did. He wrote...
I think I did know this.
I will look this up. You can keep going, but because he does have a character.
Okay.
And that character is James Reed. Sorry, it's the James Reed Mysteries.
James Reed. That doesn't sound very pulpy.
Isn't that what it says here? I mean, it is. I mean, all right.
Are they actually pulpy as in fantastical, or are they just detective
Let me
stories?
see here. They are detective stories. Yeah, former Scotland Yard investigator James Reed returns this time to challenge a sleazy blackmail scheme. So it's
involving lesbians. Oh, so many lesbians.
That's kind of what I gather. They're all sort of like seedy, because it's about a Scotland Yard detective who moves to Hollywood and becomes a private investigator.
Sure,
and gets into
if he's writing these
affairs.
in the 70s,
yeah,
probably writing these in the 70s and 80s, I could definitely see that. I knew that Sangster had done, well, in addition to writing for television quite a bit and film, he also did plenty of novel stuff. He even wrote for comics a little bit. And here's a little factoid from this, that for you and me and all of the comics fans, now you may have known that there was a magazine in the UK called House of Hammer,
yes,
which was basically like a fan magazine, but also an official fan magazine that included comic book adaptations of Hammer films. So Father Shandor, who we see in this film, he's the knockoff Van Helsing.
He's actually my favorite character in the movie.
Yeah, I like him too. He's just not. He's not Cushing.
He's not Cushing, but I like that he's a swing in a different direction personality-wise. He's a big, boisterous, almost sort of Falstaffian kind of vampire.
Yes. Yeah, he's almost Brian Blessed. So the after they adapted Dracula, Prince of Darkness and House of Hammer, they spawned an ongoing feature with Shandor as a demon-fighting priest.
Really?
Father Shandor, Demon Stalker, became a recurring feature in House of Hammer, which means, I think you know me well enough, I will now track down these issues.
I kind of want to read those myself, because I
want to
like
read the continuing adventures of Father Shandor.
I just, by the way, while on my Google search about Sangster's books, he has a screenwriting book. I have to read Jimmy Sangster's Screenwriting Techniques for Success.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind reading that too, because of course it would be totally outdated and awesome.
Anytime you can describe gauzy nightgowns in your script, take the opportunity.
Have a thesaurus handy, because you're going to want to come up with different words saying diaphanous, gauzy, transparent, translucent.
When in doubt, to get the reader's attention back, just throw in a use of heaving bosom.
I would say that in one of my less admirable works, I did run out of adjectives and adverbs, and I simply said nipple showing.
It was not my proudest moment.
We did already veer off topic, but I'll wrap up my factoids.
yeah.
But I was glad to hear that, and I will look those novels up, and I'm going to track down House of Hammer magazine. Anyway, so as I mentioned, things may not have been so pleasant behind the scenes. Egos were definitely on display, I think. And though Lee had established himself in various roles over the years, both at Hammer and at other studios in Europe, he still claimed that it was fear of typecasting that kept him away from donning the Count's cloak. Whatever his reasons for staying away from the character for so long, and even without snappy Sangster dialogue, it's still good to see the man bare those fangs once again, as we've already said. And now, after too long of an absence, because we get letters. Who writes letters anymore?
Yeah, I thought it was weird when they showed up at my home in a mailbox. I don't know how anyone even got my address.
That is weird.
Yeah.
After too long of an absence, it's time once again to return to factoids from the remarkable life of Christopher Goddamn Lee.
What a life, too. I mean, really.
Unbelievable.
It's really
so last time around, I had just broached his service in World War II, first in the Air Service where he never got to fly, and then with RAF intelligence. So, for the final few months of his service, Lee, who spoke fluent French, Italian, and German, among other languages, was seconded to the Central Registry of War Criminals and Security Suspects. Here, he was tasked with helping to track down Nazi war criminals. Of his time with the organization, Lee said, quote, "We were given dossiers of what they'd done and told to find them, interrogate them as much as we could, and hand them over to the appropriate authority. We saw these concentration camps. Some had been cleaned up, some had not," unquote. Man, it's just grim. He retired from the RAF in 1946 with the rank of flight lieutenant. Lee also mentioned, factoid number 2, that during the war he was attached to the Special Operations Executive and the Long Range Desert Group, the precursor of the SAS, but always declined to go into details. Quote, I was attached to the SAS from time to time, but we are forbidden, former, present, or future, to discuss any specific operations.
Oh my God.
Let's just say I was in Special Forces and leave it at that. People can read into that what they like. And we will. I'm gonna right now. Factoid number 3, as a lot of people already may have heard this story. I love it. This nugget from the filming of The Lord of the Rings, in a particular scene, Peter Jackson wanted Christopher Lee to scream after being stabbed in the back. However, Lee refused. He told the director that he had witnessed many men getting stabbed in the back, and none of them ever screamed. According to the late actor, they merely sighed as air escaped their lungs.
Holy shit.
Fuck!
Oh,
I know!
Christopher
Lee, he saw some shit, man. And probably did some of it.
Can I talk about? I now have my next screenwriting project has to be Christopher Lee Nazi Hunter.
Oh my God!
I mean, who wouldn't want to watch that? That's amazing.
Good luck finding someone that tall.
I mean, but the other thing is too, like what was he up to in SAS? He was kicking ass, obviously.
He was, and not allowed to talk about it.
Oh, and I love the very gentleman. Well, we were sworn never to speak of it. You know.
I love the whole thing. Is like past, present, and future. We are not allowed to talk about our missions, and I'm like, God damn it, that's awesome.
Because that's cooler than whatever story you could tell, because it sends your mind spinning into who knows what kind of shit he was into.
And it could have literally been just tracking people down and going, oh, no, that's him. Great. Yeah. Let them know we found them. Okay, great.
Yeah.
We could have been sitting in a car with binoculars. But in my mind, is he sneaking into places and torturing Nazi war criminals? Yes.
Is he crashing through skylights in the hidden bases of these Nazi war criminals with a machine gun and going, hands up, you Nazi bastard?
Especially if they're Nazi scientists and they're continuing their experiments.
Yeah.
Oh my God, do I want this movie?
He has to put down a monster that he finds in a lab. I'm sorry, you didn't choose this fate, but I can't let you live.
Oh my God, it's so good.
It's so good. Oh man, I love it.
So more to come as we go into more Christopher Lee films, but I love touching on the life of the man. I'm probably not cooler, but there's still awesome factoids throughout the man's life.
Incredibly interesting man.
Yes, indeed.
Let's talk about the not so interesting poster for this movie, though.
Okay. I'm ready. I've prepared myself.
Because it's another poster that has an awful lot of white space and a whole bunch of writing on it.
Yeah, this one, because of the white space, the black type, and the way they wrote these taglines, this is basically a newspaper. I love the whole thing right there. It's like, the world's most evil vampire lives again! ! Seeks human victims to satisfy his thirst for blood.
Yeah. Perry White somewhere has been putting this headline out, you know.
Olsen!
Yeah. I hear the world's most evil vampire is living again. I just got scuttlebutt. That's the word on the street.
I mean, that's good, but it's the seeks human victims to satisfy his thirst for blood. I'm like, that is just such a lead, such a subhead.
Ooh, I better turn to page A4 to get the rest of the story.
So they're hyping that, and then we get this illustration. At least isn't terrible, because essentially they're photos that have been drawn on top of.
Yeah, you've got what is actually one of the coolest scenes in the movie, which is Sandor
we'll talk about
staking this vampire woman who's being held down by another priest.
I can't wait to talk about that scene.
Yeah, that scene
so
rules.
You've got vampire staking.
Yeah.
You've got scary font for the movie title.
Dracula,
movie title,
Prince of Darkness.
Yeah, the movie title smaller than the world's most evil vampire lives again, smaller than the tagline. And then
I only drew a picture this big. Oh, we got to fill the rest of this poster with something. World's most evil vampire. Yeah.
You got big Christopher Lee head. Dramatic underlit.
Yeah.
But then I love this. the fangs have been extended. They're longer than they are in the movie, so you have cartoonish fangs
but
sticking
also
out of
this
his mouth.
expression is one where he's just kind of like, he's a little maudlin, you know. He's a little like, oh, I guess I'm back.
Occasionally, and actually, this is a typical expression of him as Dracula. Occasionally, when he gets animalistic, angry Dracula and shows rage, that's actually rarer. There's often this look that you're seeing in the poster, which is kind of like, just eerie, like the lifted eyes, the wide
it's
eyes.
About the combination of that expression with the extended fangs that give me this sort of like, oh, another day for Dracula.
They just don't understand my inner pain.
Yeah, it's a little bit emo Dracula.
Emo Dracula,
yeah,
which started the goth movement right there.
Why won't
this
anyone just give me the benefit of the doubt?
Anne Rice based her entire career off of this film, and then all the goths followed after her.
The ultimate emo vampire novel, really.
Amen, bro.
It's nothing but sad vampires. So sad.
And yet Dracula's not sad in this movie.
No, he's not. That's the thing, though. And once again, I recognize the expression it would be, but it is those weird fangs that turn his mouth down into that kind of frowning, like, oh, poor old Dracula all alone. Poor little Dracula.
All he needs is a hug.
Yeah. Oh, he just a sweet old little Dracula, isn't he? He ain't so bad.
You may be undead, but I'm going to give you an unhug. I don't even know what that means.
Oh, I needed that so bad. You have no idea.
The way I talk, it's these fangs. They're so big.
That's the other thing. Is imagining what this Dracula, if he spoke in this movie, would talk like with those fangs. He'd be like, "Hi there, I'm Dracula."
Hey, your daughters.
Yeah.
They asked me.
Gonna drink your blood. Gonna drink your blood.
Back,
come here. And then everyone in the movie goes, "I'm sorry. What was that?" I said you're all doomed. I'm gonna drink your blood. I'm not getting a word of this.
No, I don't understand. Can you, I don't know, write it on a piece of paper and show it to us? Oh, wait, he's written it backwards. Does anyone have a mirror?
Is it a mirror over here? He
signed an Alucard.
Alucard.
I don't do that.
Is that someone else? Have we mistaken his identity?
I don't think the Hammer. Oh man, I don't know for certain, but I don't think the Hammer films ever do an Alucard.
I hope
even
not.
when he jumps up to the present day, I don't think he pretends.
I hope not.
We'll see.
I'd like to think this Dracula's a little smarter.
Oh, we'll have to see. But anyway, the poster, not terrible, but not great.
And another one that says all new in color, yet it's monochromatic in nature, which is the orange and the black. Halloween colors.
Ooh, they really are. Even though this came out in January of '66.
Well, it can be Halloween any time of the year when you're seeing a Dracula film.
You're absolutely right.
I got to talk about some of these other taglines. Of course, we saw the one that's the world's most evil vampire lives again, and such like that, and on for how long that that tagline is. But here's some other random ones. Yeah,
I know the best one here.
The greatest all-new fright show in town. Come on, bring your kids.
I have a feeling that was probably one of the originals, mainly because as Hammer was doing more and more, they released this as a double bill, and this one went out with Plague of the Zombies,
a classic,
which is pretty good for a mid-'60s British zombie movie. But this is still the better of the two.
Yeah. Bring the kids. It's the all-new fright show. Like, it just has that sort of carnival barker. The greatest all-new fright show in town. One night Dracula. Only. Yeah.
Come see Zombie.
Yeah. Bloodthirsty vampire lives again. There's another headline for you.
Sure.
He's thirsty for blood. Then we have dead for 10 years. Dracula, Prince of Darkness, lives again.
Yeah. I love the specificity. How long has he been dead? Oh, okay, great.
10 years?
I did notice that the movie I mean, this movie came out 8 years after Lee's previous one, but this movie is actually kind of addressing the passing of time. Like it's been slightly longer.
Though there's something I want to talk about with the character of Sandor and his knowledge or lack thereof of how long Dracula has been gone for, because
we'll talk about
inconsistent between scenes. And then the one I'm sure is your favorite as well.
Yes,
the very simple command that this poster is giving you: fight back, defend yourself.
A tagline that could go for many films.
Like,
I love how
like
that's
70% of films.
I think
defend yourself.
I think Miss Congeniality 2, this was also its tagline.
Fight back, defend yourself, Sandra Bullock. They're trying to ruin that beauty pageant.
I think Sweet Home Alabama also had fight back, defend yourself.
That's right. That other woman wants your man, Reese Witherspoon. What are you going to do about it?
I decided it'd be Sandra Bullock and Reese Witherspoon films, but I'm loving that they all were like, should we use the Dracula Prince of Darkness one? No. I don't know. I like it for this.
It worked. You'd be amazed how often it works. It just really excels almost any movie. Fight back, defend myself. Yeah.
Fight back, defend yourself.
They're trying to bring down Santa.
Anyway, yes, that is my favorite of the taglines.
Fight back, defend yourself. It's Dracula, the Prince of Darkness.
Yeah, pretty cool the way the movie actually starts with that voiceover. Meanwhile, in Bavaria, where the Balkans.
Oh, we do get some locations name checked in this movie, which is unusual.
Yeah, yes, but locations that make no damn sense.
We're talking about Carlsbad.
Yeah, Castle Dracula is in Carlsbad?
Yeah.
What the fuck are you talking about? Getting me all angry and shit.
So we do start with previously on Dracula, as we said, and we see the whole ending of Horror of Dracula with the fight between Van Helsing and Dracula.
Yes, but before that, we get the 20th Century Fox logo. This was a Fox release.
This is actually when I should indicate this, because because I have the Shout Factory Collector's Edition. I watched
just brag. All right, whatever, man.
I watched the UK release of this movie.
Which is actually shorter.
No, it's 5 minutes longer.
Oh,
the American release is 85 minutes. This is a 90-minute movie. The UK version. I want to mention that because
it was cut quite a bit by the UK censors. So I guess the original was even longer than your 90 minutes.
But yes, I watched that version thinking that it would be interesting to go through this and see what the differences might be as we go through the movie.
Okay.
So I watched the UK version. So I did not see that. I just have the Hammer Films Presents.
Well, to me, it was kind of a. I mean, it just automatically I was like, oh damn, it's the Fox, triumphant music, and I was like going, oh, if only Cushing was in this.
Yeah,
because we like, the Star Wars vibe. But actually, since we do start with a flashback, we do get or at least I got the 20th Century Fox fanfare, followed by some Cushing facing off.
And we get like the whole last 5 minutes of Horror of Dracula here.
Quite a bit of it, yeah. Like I was surprised. I was like, oh great, we get to see him throw the candlestick again. Not one of the Count's finest moments. Get away from me, Van Helsing. I will throw whatever's at hand at you.
I will say he has a couple similarly embarrassing moments in this film.
Yes.
So then we go from now that we're all caught up on what happened last time on Dracula. We start with a funeral procession through the woods. Yes,
very somber.
Very somber. There's a devastated woman who runs out of the trees and up to the funeral procession and is like, no, you can't do this. And we see a guy who's got all the classic vampire staking weaponry on him. And she's like, it's my daughter. Does this really have to be necessary? And the priest saying, it is the only way.
Only way to be sure. And I guess if this is an area where vampires have roamed, but you do wonder, are they staking everyone that dies in this town?
It's the only way to know.
Did she die? We never find out.
No,
it doesn't matter.
We only stake the hotties. That was who we went after.
It's tragically a pretty young woman, and her mother is devastated, not wanting them to stake her.
Yeah.
And also, of course, they're going to bury her in unhallowed ground. That's another thing, is that
Yes.
not only are they going to stake her, that's why they're out in the forest. She's not going to be in a churchyard.
I do like the idea
So
of them going like, "Oh, that beautiful young woman died in town. That sounds like Dracula's MO. Better stake her to be sure."
it's probably it. Just like if you died and you're very attractive young female, they're like going, better stake her. Okay.
Yeah.
Just say it.
Just better to be safe than sorry.
Probably Dracula.
Yeah.
So they're going to do it anyway, but then a mysterious figure shows up
and fires a gun.
Fires a
kablam, and everybody looks over at him, and immediately, because once again of who I am, this guy immediately reminds me of Lawrence Luckinbill as Cybok in Star Trek V. The way he rides in this movie, and he's like, "You stop!" and he's got that sort of dramatic kind of,
Yeah.
He has that vibe.
I'll give you your Luckinbill, but I was getting Blessed vibes. But then again, at the same time,
100%.
I'm not as huge a fan of Star Trek V.
Yeah, I will go to bat for Star Trek V, man. Acknowledging it has its faults, but also saying there's a lot to love about that movie.
Okay, this isn't that podcast. We don't do that here.
Not yet.
But
I haven't started my Star Trek podcast yet, which I think a lot of people are surprised about because that feels inevitable.
Yeah, but do you want to be one of the 80 million Star Trek podcasts?
That's a little bit. I have yet to find a new way in. Has kind of been.
You got to find your hook.
Yeah, that's what stopped me from doing the Star Trek podcast.
But this guy now,
I love
people,
this guy.
the people who are about to stake the young woman are clearly Catholic priests.
Yes,
but the guy who has shown up is a monk.
Yes,
Father Shandor is how it's pronounced all the way through the film, and yet in the credits is spelled Sandor, but it is Shandor.
Same on IMDb as well. Yeah, Sandor, but it is Shandor.
And he is a burly, bearded, and this is something I liked about it. He's tan, like he's deeply tan. So this guy wanders, even though he clearly came from a monastery and talks about it, and he has fellow brothers and whatever. But he seems like he just sort of wanders around, stopping terrible things from happening. So he shows up here and says, "You superstitious idiots, you're not going to put a stake in this woman."
And he
checks her out.
He checks her neck, and he's like, "No, I'll bury her at my church."
Yeah. And they're like going, "Well, we're not going to read over it." It's like, "Doesn't matter. I'll bury her at the monastery and she'll be..." And so the mother's like, "Oh, thank you. Oh, Father Shandor is awesome."
Yeah, yes, I am. But immediately from his introduction, I'm like, I love this guy. Whoever this guy is in the movie, this guy's awesome. Because I'm looking for anyone with energy in these movies, really. Because we see so many bland British people in these movies that are just like, oh, dear. So
I'm about to... Well, yeah, that is a problem with the way they're portrayed. I will say this about this sweeping... statement about the cast. I think everyone's good in this. Even the young ladies in this, who are generally speaking always there just to kind of provide, they're good actors. Everyone in this is quite
and I'll tell you
good.
what did huge favors for them in terms of my viewing of this: the fact that we watched Curse of the Mummy's Tomb last week, which had one of the most boring casts of characters we've ever seen. So everybody in this movie felt way more lively to me in this thing.
We were much happier have the...
Yeah, we've had a run of some pretty boring central characters. So it was nice to see, these people have a little bit of something to them. Even if they are a little bit of stock, hammer, young, wealthy people.
Yes, well, again, it's another story of traveling Brits, of English people going, "Oh, we thought we might see the country." So everyone, especially our lead guy, who we've seen before.
Yes, indeed.
But our lead guy is very much of the, things have taken a turn, but I'm sure things will work out all right. Pip, pip. He's just such that guy. Then I'm like, you are a good actor, but your character is someone I would want to punch immediately in the face. In the face.
There are so many times in this movie where you're just like, come on. I mean, this movie, most of all, has the like Friday the 13th kind of setup where you're like, you fucking morons.
Yes, where you're sitting in the audience going, why the fuck would you do this?
The
Why are you going?
mysterious castle. Surely nothing will happen to us.
We were told not to go there. Yes, but well, we're here. May as well go in the door. Pip pip. Hello.
Nothing shall happen to us. We're young and British.
We're young and British.
So then we immediately cut to, because it's a Hammer movie, pub shenanigans.
Oh, I can't get enough of them. Yeah, our lead character, who
Charles.
he's not really our lead character, but he's one of our lead characters.
Charles
this is
our
kind
lead
of
character.
an
I mean, if Charles is it's interesting. I also realized as I was writing my notes, Charles and Diana are sort of our lead characters, and I was like,
yeah, this is way before that.
I mean, it is, but it is fresh in my mind thanks to the current season of The Crown.
Yeah, we were just talking about The Crown.
Yeah,
Charles is played by our friend from Revenge of Frankenstein.
Yes, Francis Matthews.
Francis Matthews, who was Hans.
Yes.
Who was the protege.
Yes.
This is not as good a character for him to play, but
no.
But so he's doing beer bongs at the bar in somewhere in the Balkans or Bavaria.
Yeah.
And they're like, chug, chug, chug. He's like, oh, I can't finish it. Oh, I'm just here. And then he pays for a round on the house.
For the whole pub. And when he goes to sit back down, is it Helen because Helen's the oh my in this whole movie. Oh my. Won't somebody please think of the children? You know, she's a real Helen Lovejoy.
This is two brothers and their wives.
Yes.
And they are traveling. So Helen is not Charles's wife.
No.
Helen is the wife of Charles's brother.
Alan.
Looking for the character name Alan. There you go. And yes, Helen is played by Barbara Shelley, and I liked her mainly because she gets the big arc of being first the most uptight, the most prim proper, and oh, how dreadful. Then the most afraid and superstitious, and that's good. And then she gets to pull out all the fucking stops when we get to a certain part of the
Barbara
movie.
Shelley is in that Shout Factory documentary, and she's talking about how she feels this was the finest work of her career, really getting to play the range of this.
And she is a character that gets a range as opposed to most of these people.
Yeah.
In fact, I was waiting for Charles for most of the movie to show something other. Even when things get dark later on, it's not until a certain part where he sees a certain dead body that any kind of shock, horror, or dread, even with all the creepy stuff, he's like going, well, I guess the horses have run off.
When we get to the scene, I will say Francis Matthews also interviewed in the Shout Factory documentary, and I will point out which scene he calls the worst acting I've ever seen by anyone, let alone myself.
Oh, I can't wait. Oh, I hope you'll
said, I cringe to this day anytime I see it.
Oh, that's great. And that's nice humility on his part.
It is.
He's not bad in this. It's just,
no,
again,
he's not.
But
it is, and actually, even I was going, oh, okay, it's not that bad. The scene where we'll get to it, but he goes, no, to this day, I still can't bear to watch it.
So essentially, our traveling Brits, Helen derides Charles for being a spendthrift. Like, well, that's like the third time you've bought drinks for everybody, and he's like, we can afford it. It's like no kind of money, whatever.
I'm throwing my wealth in these working class people's faces. Do you understand me, Helen?
and I guess Diana, his wife, Charles's wife, who's very cute. I liked her quite a bit. Suzanne Farmer, who also gets some stuff to do in this movie, good for her, and is capable. But she's just amused by her husband. She thinks it's all so delightful. Yeah. And Alan, the brother's like, I gave up years ago trying to tell my brother what to do. Things are just crazy. So they're having a great time.
So they're having their pub shenanigans. This is when Shandor comes in.
Yep, Father Shandor comes in.
And he immediately goes to the wall where there's garlic hanging. He's like, what? Garlic? You're being ridiculous. Now, here I'm thinking, initially, between that first scene and when he comes in here, I'm going, okay, this is the guy who goes, there's no such thing as vampires. No.
It did seem like that's where they were going.
But that's not where he's going for. He goes, don't you know Dracula hasn't been spotted in 10 years. He was killed. So I'm like, oh, so he does believe in vampire. He just thinks the threat is long over. That's interesting to me. That I found a fascinating twist.
He has kept a tab on the areas vampires comings and goings, and I guess in the decades since Dracula's death, he's like, I think we did it.
Yeah.
Way to go, Van Helsing.
Yeah.
Thumbs up.
And then one of my favorite scenes in the movie when he walks over by their table so he can warm his ass on the fire.
That is something that like reviewers are pointing out. They're like going, he's clearly they're trying to come up with a different take, like a Van Helsing.
Right.
This is a different guy. And they liked, as you were pointing out, that he's an earthy man of the people type of monk. So he's not a scientific aesthete. He's this guy who's like, he comes and going, oh, it's so cold out there. Froze my ass off. And he goes and stands in front of the fire.
I think he says.
Shoves his butt up against the fire and then basically looks at the Brits and's like, sorry, I know it's offensive, but I gotta warm this ass.
Excuse my gigantic ass.
He actually says, I gotta warm this ass. Yeah. And he draws ass out like, this ass. And it's gross.
This big old ass. No. So go ahead, sneak a peek.
But they are charmed by him.
Yeah.
And it's basically just a, who are you guys? Well, we're traveling. We're just visiting. We're from England. Great. Where are you headed? We're going to, what's the town? Did you write that down?
The town they were going to? I didn't write that down. No.
Well, they're going to some town, and he's like going, okay, great. Just don't go to Carlsbad. And they're like, oh, well, that's the best route. We were going to go through there. He's like, no. But if you have to, don't go after dark and don't go to that castle. If you see the castle, just keep on trucking. And they're like, well, that's mysterious. Thanks.
This is 100% the Friday the 13th guy going, you all going to that camp? You're doomed. You're all doomed. Except for
he's not crazy, this guy.
No.
He's not like, y'all gonna die.
Yeah.
Y'all gonna die.
Like, no, that castle's bad news. And the other thing I love about this character is he's packing heat. And he makes a big deal about, no, the other monks don't know this. I have to disguise this rifle in pieces, but I know the dangers out there, so I bring it with me every chance. And he goes, those stupid monks, they think every time I bring back some animal I've shot, it must have fallen dead by God's will. I love Father Shandor. He is quite a... In fact, I want to see Van Helsing and Father Shandor in the movie.
You took the thought out of my head.
Wouldn't that have been
laid
something?
It out for the people.
He becomes Van Helsing's sidekick.
Why does it have to be a one or the other? You've created this very cool character. We all like Shandor. Yeah. Shandor and Van Helsing, Cushing and this guy riffing off each other. Give me more.
I've got your back, Van Helsing. Away,
and I should say this is Andrew Keir.
Yes.
Playing Shandor. It's not fair that I not mention the man's name.
No, he's wonderful. And he's great. Looking through his IMDb, I have another movie of his that I now must see, just as I was looking through his IMDb pictures here. It led me to something called The Pirates of Blood River that also features Christopher Lee and him.
Yeah, that's another Hammer one.
Yeah, I've never seen. Oh, I see Michael Ripper's in it. Oliver Reed.
Yep.
I got to check this one out. I've never seen this one.
They did some pirate pictures. They also did, like we've mentioned, they did sort of prisoner of war movies. They were doing other stuff.
Well, this movie was shot back to back with Rasputin the Mad Monk, and they talked about, I love it, on the IMDb that basically the entire crew and most of the cast of that movie just moved right into this.
Yeah, because you got Francis Matthews as Charles, and you got Suzanne Farmer as Diana. In this one, they're a married couple.
Mm-hmm.
And in Rasputin the Mad Monk, they play a brother and sister.
Yes.
So you like going between sets. They're like going, wait, do I kiss you in this one or not? I just love the fact that
I'll just kiss you to be safe.
Yeah, they were partnered up in both, but in one they were playing married couple and one sibling.
And also
Rasputin the Mad Monk is not good.
Oh, but I kind of love it.
but it is Christopher Lee as Rasputin.
And it's worth watching for that. You also have Barbara Shelley in it as well.
Yeah, it is essentially the same cast.
Yeah.
They just jumped over.
The
same sets.
I've always had a soft spot for the same set. I've always had a soft spot for that one, just because I think it's very silly. But I love it. I love it in a Mystery Science Theater 3000 kind of manner. It is that sort of arch silliness of movies of this era that I enjoy.
When I was doing a bunch of Dracula tinged Rasputin research back in the day, I just absorbed pretty much, of course I had to read all the source material about the Tsar and Tsarina and Rasputin, so a lot of historical things, but I was like, let me watch the movies that have been made. So of course this one was, I was like, oh, this is not good. This is not good. I watched the Alan Rickman Rasputin miniseries.
Yes, I remember watching that. I think when it was on. That was an HBO thing, I believe.
Yeah, and actually it wasn't a miniseries. It was just a film for HBO.
Yeah.
But still, again, great casting. And had my script ever been made, are you kidding me? I would just be like, try to forget Rickman already did this because I want him to do this again.
Well, because I mean, that's the thing. I love the way that Rasputin, who's such a weird and fascinating guy in reality, has just become a pop culture supervillain.
Yes.
Whether it's or
they go the other way, of course it's the whole thing of like, well, misunderstood and tragic. So yeah, your supervillains always either become fully evil, or then you have the people on the other side going, no, they were just misunderstood, and then you have historians going, no one's all good or all evil. This was a fascinating guy with a fascinating background. Yeah, and if you want to read more about Rasputin, check out your local library. The more you know.
Ding, ding, Reading Rainbow. So Shandor warns him about this, and I love their thing when he leaves. They're like, well, that castle he spoke of isn't on this map. Well, then it must not be there. I'm sure he was confused. Anyway, and that's their way to dismiss what he says. If it's not on the map, it's not there. And Helen's the only one going, well, I don't know. He was pretty convincing about that. And they're just like, not on the map, Helen.
Helen is the only one right off the bat to take any warnings seriously. But since she's such a priggish, unpleasant lady for most of the time, I think they're just like going, yeah. Let's just not listen to anything Helen has to say.
No, they just constantly dismiss Helen this whole movie. They're just like, whatever.
Until they can't dismiss her.
Yeah, well, that's kind of why I was kind of rooting for Helen at the end of the movie, because I'm like, you know what? She deserves to kill all these people for how much they dismissed her. I want a Carrie-like situation where it's like, oh, I'm sorry. Now I have powers and you're all fucked.
You get a little bit of that,
but
just
not.
She doesn't quite get the ultimate revenge.
No. So then it cuts to a sign indicating Carlsbad is that away, and a coach stopping, and their coachman, our four British travelers, saying, "Nope, I'm not taking you any farther. Not at night." And it's like,
they're like, hey man, it's not our fault that we've been stuck here for 4 hours because your wheel had a problem or whatever. He's like going, no, it's not your fault, but at the same time, I can't be forced to take you any further because it's getting dark. And they're like going, and he goes, get out of the coach. And they're like, all right. And then Alan goes, he's just a crook. He just wants to steal our luggage. And then he's like, fuck you. And
there's
tosses
a moment
their
where they said, come on, why can't you just do it? And the coachman slaps Charles in the face.
Oh, he does, yeah.
And then when Charles comes at him, the coachman pulls out a knife.
Yeah.
And that's when they're like, oh, he just wants to rob us.
Right. And it turns out, no.
He cuts away their carriage and throws it back. And he goes, if any of you are still alive or whatever, if any of you are still here, I'll be back at this spot 2 hours after dawn tomorrow.
Yeah. And if you're here, I'll pick you up and take you the rest of the way. Good luck. Yeah, and he takes off. Now, here's the problem. There's a problem with this movie in various parts that reminded me of some of the problems that we had in the Steven Seagal film that we watched this week. I just outed us as having watched a Steven
another
Seagal
podcast film that I do. Yeah, that Brendan Guest does. Yeah.
The weirdness of I mean, I get the budget they work with and what they could do, but he's like going, night's coming. and I'm not going to go after. And I'm looking around, going, that is the middle of the
Yeah, it's
afternoon.
2 in the afternoon. There's no
There is
question.
no way that night is about to fall on these people. So
No.
anyway, they're stuck there.
They do that again later at the end of the movie too, and it's like, yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, I'm like, this doesn't work with the time. But they go, well, we're stuck here, and you go, well, look, there's that castle that we didn't think existed. It's right over there. Cut to model.
Yeah.
Then
it looks bad. I will say that when it cuts to it, it's noticeably fake.
Yeah, it's Camelot and Holy Grail.
They're going, oh, we should stay in the shack that's right here. And they're like,
there's a shack.
That must
like,
be that.
No.
Yeah. When all of a sudden, a carriage speeds towards them, and they're like, oh, look, what luck, a carriage. And they're going,
yes.
Oh, there's no one driving the carriage.
There's no one driving the carriage. They're like, well, this is the luckiest day of our lives.
Let me stop it. And then, of course, the horses immediately stop in front of Charles. And once again, Helen's going, I don't know about this. This seems kind of eerie. And they're like, shut up, Helen.
Shut up, Helen. They load the bags on, and Charles is he's like, this is great. So I'm going to turn the horses around. You guys get inside. Great. And we're going to go on to the town that we were supposed to go to. And he's like, giddy up, horses. And they immediately ignore his lead.
Go in the exact opposite direction.
Yeah, and start heading up the road to Carlsbad, taking them to the castle. And here's the thing. This is very, in a weird way, this whole movie does echo stuff from the novel.
Yes.
There's a lot of similarities. And so part of me is being fed stuff that I like.
Yeah.
And I do like an eerie driverless coach taking them against their will to the castle. I just was hoping for more.
Yeah, because
anyway.
It did start to feel like Sangster going, let me pull some stuff from the novel I didn't use last time. Which, not a bad, keep rating that for good stuff. There's more good stuff in there that didn't get used the first time. And I thought the same thing here. I'm going, oh, okay, so they're kind of going with a more classic Dracula setup now.
This is very gothy too. I'm liking it so far.
Yeah, I'm in at this point.
Now, here's another thing. We'll find out at the very end that Castle Dracula has a moat, has like a river in front of it, which is frozen over. I don't want to spoil anything for the audience. At any point watching this movie until the end, did you think of it being winter? Other than him coming in and saying, man, it's too cold out there for man nor beast.
Not once, not ever. It's always the bright sunshine of the countryside,
right. There's
when the ice came into it, I was ground. What?
Plus, if they're using something out of vampire mythology, which they do at the end, you'd think, why would Count Dracula have running water in front of his castle?
Yeah, we'll get there.
Anyway,
I'm not thrilled with how Dracula goes out in this picture. I'll just say that.
No, like a punk. Anyway, so the coach, without their bidding,
and I love it's taking them the wrong way, and he's going, no, turn around, horses, and then finally Charles like, all right, we'll go this way, whatever, Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Alan's what's going on? He's like going, well, they're just taking us to the castle, and he's like, oh, well, whatever. They do. That's like, the whole time Charles is like, well, that's odd.
Yeah, I mean, I would have been freaked out by the driverless carriage, but once it starts taking me in a direction and the horses refuse to turn around, I'm full on not staying wherever they've taken me.
Yes. And they're taking you specifically to a place that a holy man has basically said, don't go there.
But it wasn't on the map, so I'm sure it's fine.
It's fine. It got a terrible rating in the latest Michelin guide.
He probably had a bad experience and has just been bad-mouthing the place.
1 star.
Yeah. Not enough fresh towels for my gigantic ass.
Continental breakfast? All it was a poorly wrapped cinnamon bun.
Store-bought, I think not. That's what we really
mint
want.
on my pillow.
What we really want is Father Shandor's hotel and lodging reviews.
Yelp ruined my whole career. I had a thing going. Anyway,
should we stay there? I don't know. Father Shandor, what do you think? Absolutely not.
I had to pay extra for shampoo. Anyway, so they get to the castle, and
they get to the castle. No one's around. They're like, well, surely whoever's in there heard us roll up with these horses.
And the door is open too. Pretty much, they open the door, and there's lit candles and a table, and they're like, "Wow,
place is set for 4 with plates and
like, hello."
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh, we don't like this." And he's like, "Anyone home?" Wait, when did the horses run away? Is it immediately or is it after a bit?
No, it is immediately. It is before they go into the castle.
Because Helen is saying, like, this makes me uncomfortable. We shouldn't be here. And it's like, well, whatever. It's a place to stay for the night. Yeah. And I'm sure they'll. And so let's get our bags. They turn around. The horses take the fuck off.
Yeah.
And they take all their stuff too. They leave.
Yeah.
So they're like, I guess we're stuck here. And again, they all come inside, and the place is made up. It's ready for guests.
Yeah. And they're just like, well, I don't understand. How would they know we're coming? And Charles is like, oh, Helen, I'm sure there's already 4 people staying here. You watch. Any second now, 4 totally normal people are coming down those steps.
He does say, like,
any minute.
Totally. Yeah, because Diana does point out that it's not just that there's, places set. There's exactly 4 places. And at this point, I mean, I know that they're pulling on plenty of tradition from goth literature, but all I could think is Hotel California. I was thinking, like, you can check in, but you can check out, but you can never leave. So yeah, the whole thing is basically they've been waiting for them, and it's also very similar to, of course, Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Yeah.
We do get a riffraff type.
Oh, we absolutely get a riffraff in this. I just want Charles to be like, wait for it, any moment now. Like, they just keep standing there.
Here come the 4 people, any second.
It now. We turned into Father Shandor, actually, right there. Now.
No.
So I'm staying here. Yeah, so they're waiting, and then Charles goes, well, you know what? I'll go check. I'll go upstairs and see who's around, knock on some doors and whatnot. And so he goes upstairs, and he's looking around, and he goes in one of the rooms, and he's like, what's this? My luggage?
This is pretty crazy. He goes in one of the bedrooms, and he's like, what the fuck? He calls his brother up. Yeah. He's like, Alan, come up here. Alan goes up there. And he goes, what? And he points at the bed, and he goes, check that out. He goes, those are my bags. He's like, uh-huh. And what do you think's next door?
Yeah,
I bet I find mine.
In the other room.
And then it's like, so they're like, again, this is where I run the fuck out of the place. Yeah. It's not just that the horses brought me there.
Yeah. This can no longer be explained.
Just within 5 minutes, not even 5 minutes, the horses ran off in a whole other direction. How the fuck could the bags get there and be unloaded and sitting on the bed?
Yeah.
Supernatural shit.
Absolutely.
But they go back downstairs, and instead they're like, well, I guess we'll sit down and have dinner.
What are you gonna do? Yeah. I am a bit peckish. But also, like, what dinner? Where? There still seems to be no one around.
Yeah, well, I can't remember exactly how it is, but one of the ladies turns around and sees a shadowy figure in the doorway, and goes like, ah! And for half a second, I'm like going, oh, please be Dracula. Yeah. Please let him say something cool. But no.
Just give me a good evening, Just give me that.
We don't even get that.
No.
Well, it's fitting, though, because Dracula is still, at this moment, dead.
Yeah. But you know what? With these movies, I'm ready to just have Dracula back. I'm cool with that.
So instead, we get a tall, creepy, servant-looking dude.
Clove, played by Philip Latham, who, by the way, passed away just last year at 91.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
91. Yeah. I guess that makes sense, because here, I mean, I know he's made up, but also you've got a tall, skinny, kind of skeletal-looking dude. He looks old here, and this movie was shot in 1965.
Yeah.
So I'm like, what? 91. Way to go, man. I hope his life was long and he has a nice long IMDb.
He retired from acting in the 90s and withdrew completely from public life.
Well, you would if you're really, really old. But anyway, here he's like, hello, welcome to the master's house. And they're like, well, thank you so much.
When he says, I didn't, because Helen lets out a blood-curdling scream when she sees him. He goes, I didn't mean to startle you. It was not my intention.
Oh, here's a behind-the-scenes tidbit. Helen's screams were dubbed.
Yes.
And they were dubbed by Suzanne Farmer. So the other actress in the film is just a better screamer.
Yep.
I think that Barbara Shelley's really good in this and is a good actor, but apparently her screams are not up to snuff. So
she owns up to that on the documentary on Shout. She talks about this and says, "Yes, I, the screams weren't what Terry was looking for." And they don't fit. By the way, they don't sound right when she does scream. Actually, it does look dubbed in.
Yeah, but still, I will say Suzanne is a good screamer.
Oh,
it's a good scream.
But I do like I didn't mean to startle, just coming out of the shadows.
I know. I didn't mean to startle you, though. Everything in my actions, my posture, the way I kind of didn't announce myself, everything would lead you to believe I had planned this for hours.
Ever so slowly out of the darkness.
So he welcomes them to his master's house. They have been expected. And they're like, how could you know we were coming? And he goes, well, you misunderstand. The master said that to always set places in case someone comes in. And
because he says, he has a quote here that I wrote down. He says, my master's hospitality is renowned. And they said, oh, great. Well, where is your master? He's like, oh, he's dead.
Yeah, he's dead. And they're like, oh, but what?
Yeah. Like,
he said he left standing instructions to welcome visitors with, set them up, give them a good meal and whatever. And he goes, do you want your dinner now? Because it's getting cold. And they're like, why, yes, we would.
Except for Helen, who says, we should leave right now. And they're like, oh, Helen, let's eat. For the love of God.
You with your timidity and your weird superstitious dread.
He starts serving them this soup or whatever. And it smells quite nice. And they ask him who his master was, and he's like, "Oh, a fellow by the name of Count Dracula." And apparently word has not gotten to these people about who Dracula is, because Dracula's fame in these movies is always fascinating to me.
It's fascinating to me too, in the similar way with the Frankenstein movies, where the guy has become a legend in his own time, and the story is passed from town to town. The
whole world knows who Frankenstein is.
The king of the vampires himself. If you're not Van Helsing or someone living in the vicinity of that castle, apparently no one's ever heard of Dracula. Because these Brits are like going, well, this Dracula sounds like he was a wonderful man. Yeah. And rest in peace to your master.
Yeah.
Thank you for the soup.
Oh,
pip, pip.
I do like when they raise a toast to Dracula and eerie wind starts kind of like
that's
to
all
the room. Yeah.
That's all I want in the movie is an eerie wind blowing through a room anytime Dracula is mentioned.
I wish that kept going throughout the movie, where every time somebody says name, and it's just like, did you feel a draft?
Yeah, no, his name isn't Frau Blucher, and it's not the horses going whinnying.
Classic. And Helen once again says, everyone's digging into their meals, and Helen goes, that monk told us not to come here specifically. And they're just like, oh, Helen, can you not?
Essentially, they are done with Helen. I will say this. She seemed like a pill before the superstitious dread. Mm-hmm. So, yes, I can understand them kind of like going, God damn it, this is just more of Helen being, no one can stand. Her own husband is like,
Well, because the next scene is Charles and Diana getting ready for bed, and Charles going, "Can you believe Helen tonight? I mean, that was downright rude. She barely even touched her dinner."
And Clove left the room in tears.
Poor Clove. Remind me to give him a big tip.
And she's like, "Come to bed. I'm awfully cold."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Yeah, I'm getting there, baby."
Yeah. And there's some bit about the name of her beau when she was a schoolgirl, and she's teasing him about it. The banter.
He does the whole like guess who thing, and she's like, "Oh, is it whatever
Hubert
Oliver
something
Hubert
British.
Ogilvy or something, and he's like, "No, who's that?" Well, he's my boyfriend when I was in school. And then,
Yeah.
anyway, it's
And they're talking about
delightful. And they're delightful
did
people.
Hubert Ogilvy get into bed with you? Oh no, he wasn't that type of man. And he's like, well, good, you're untouched.
But they are. What I was about to say is, I mean, I know it's not television of the mid '60s, but still, it's like, oh yeah, people are actually getting into bed together as husband and wife.
We're still
Good for them.
We're still a couple years out from that on American television.
Yeah, that's true. But here, first diaphanous nightgown, not as diaphanous as they will get. Then we're going to cut over to
I
Alan.
specifically wrote in my script, full on nip.
Alan and Helen are also getting ready for bed, and hers also very gauzy. And you're like, thank you, Hammer. You're finding your niche.
Yeah,
you're finding your way.
I come to these movies for the nightgowns.
So they're settling into Castle Dracula for the night.
And Helen now is saying, we really should just leave right now. Let's leave, because
honestly, we should get the fuck.
We just have to leave. And he's literally he's at this point literally hand waving her. Oh, Dad, pshaw, come on. Where would we go? Like, that's sort of the thing too. Where it's like, and it's just like,
has the point. There is that shack.
And she talks about, or he says something like, we'll talk about this in the morning. She goes, there's not gonna be a morning for us.
I did like that line. It is cheesy, but I just love a doomsayer. And someone just like, she's so resigned to it. That's what's so sad. She's like, oh no, you don't get it. We're not going to survive the night. I'm like, oh man.
Yeah.
I like that in a horror movie.
I do too. It goes back to
I like the gothic touches. I like that stuff.
I can't not think of Evil Dead 2. You'll be dead by dawn, right? Anyway, so they Alan is basically asleep the second his head hits the pillow, and you have Helen just, quivering under the covers. And then we have a great shot of Clove, as menacingly as possible, snuffing out the candles on a chandelier. And it's just the shot where it's like, oh shit, things are getting dark, as this man is like, 1 candle, 2 candles, 3 candles. He's just like, and the music going, woo, woo, woo.
And then he looks right at the camera and goes, you weren't expecting Christopher Lee in this film, were you? Oh, I hate to disabuse you of that notion. He's not coming. You're just going to see me snuffing candles.
Yeah, at this point in the movie, I am going like,
soup.
If he said that in this movie, I'd be like, damn, I knew it. Because it is about this time that I'm starting to go, hey, where's Dracula?
I knew there would be a delay, and I did remember from my childhood, I did remember the resurrection sequence. So I knew that
when it started happening, I was like, oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah. I knew it would be. I didn't know it was going to be that far into the movie.
I will say the thing I remembered about this one was seeing as a kid and going, that one was kind of boring. And I don't completely disagree with Past Me. This one has some pacing problems.
Oh yeah, it does. And as I said, I think one of the things that impacts it is there really is not a lot of plot.
Right.
So therefore it feels even longer if there was more happening, because this whole storyline does take about 2 days in screen time. And so it's really just about picking off the people in the castle to some degree, and then Shandor showing back up to kind of save the day.
And they're really trying to build this dread in the castle. And I think this has been a problem in a couple of Hammer movies where it's like there is this line between impending doom and like overindulgent boredom, to the point where it's like, all right, I was scared for a little bit, but now I'm just going, God, can something happen? Because we're about a half hour into the movie at this point.
Yeah. And there has been no Dracula and no vampirism.
No, and now I have a man creepily snuffing out candles, where I'm just like, all right, maybe we could, because it's like, I know Dracula's going to be in it. The other thing is, I feel like the longer you hold off on Dracula better fuck some shit up when he comes back.
Word.
Yeah, that's another thing too, where it's like if you're gonna build up to Dracula, Dracula better be badass beyond all belief once he's in it.
We don't get that either.
Oh no, we don't.
But anywho,
so yeah, Cloves. And then Helen wakes in the middle of the night and says, "Were you calling my name?" And Alan's like, "What?"
Yeah, he's like, "No, shut up, go back to sleep." She's like, "Well, I heard something.
I heard someone. I heard a distinct tinkling sound coming from Brendan's computer."
I have no idea what that sound meant. So anyway,
so she goes, "Will you please just go and look? Someone called my name in the night." And Alan gets up begrudgingly in classic like sitcom husband fashion of like, "I'll go check on the noise downstairs." God, always gotta do stuff like this. Ray Romano's trying to sleep, and Deborah heard something. Is what this scene is. All right, come on.
All right, Deborah. Go.
Oh man, but Ray Romano in a Dracula movie. Come on, that's what we want to see.
Kind of all I want in my life.
I guess he's a vampire.
But Alan peeks out in the hallway, and he sees
Clove dragging a trunk down the hall, and he does go, I see Clove pulling a trunk down the hall.
Yep. And then he decides to kind of check that out.
I better see what he's up to.
So he follows Clove.
Yeah.
And discovers that Clove has gone through a tapestry.
Yep.
Into a secret passage.
Yeah. I love there's not a hidden door. There's just a tapestry hanging over a staircase.
And if you had leaned against a tapestry, you would have fallen backwards. But
it's what we could afford.
Yeah, I think that's it.
And so he goes down the staircase into Dracula's lair.
Yeah. And there he finds a pretty funky looking coffin with Dracula's name on it.
Yeah. Not Alucard, no backwards. It full on says Dracula. I was happy that unlike the Universal movies, this guy doesn't immediately recognize the crest of Dracula.
Yes,
which apparently everyone in the world of Universal knew on first sight. What's the crest of Dracula?
I will say that at the dinner scene when Clove said, "Yes, this place belonged to Count Dracula," that's his standard, or that's his
coat of arms, I believe is what he says.
Coat of arms over there, and he points it out, and the camera shows it to us, and I'm like, "That's a bad coat of arms for Dracula."
Yeah.
It has like 3 fishes on it.
Yeah, it's pretty lame and forgettable. It's not cool and badass or.
It doesn't have a bat on it. It's not black and red.
Yeah.
Come on. But
I want a metal coat of arms. Yeah. When they cut to it, it just goes. It just says death. Fuck yeah. So yeah.
Dripping blood.
Seems to be blood coming out of it right now.
The tomb has it doesn't have a lid. It's open,
it's got like a big almost like a flag over it or something.
Yeah, that's right. At this point, it does. Once it's unveiled, it has dirt in it and a pillow.
Yeah.
But anyway, and he sees the Dracula's cloak is laid out for him.
I do like that. There's a place where it's Dracula's lair because he hung his cape up.
Yeah. So anyway, Alan's just looking around, going, "Well, this is quite odd."
And then this got my attention when all of a sudden Clove steps out of nowhere and just stabs Alan in the back.
Dude, Alan. I mean, we hardly knew ye.
Yeah. R.I.P. Alan. Because
he was pretty good. He was I liked him, but he didn't have much to do. He dies.
Yeah.
He gets stabbed in the back.
And then Clove very meticulously, very workmanlike, ties his feet up, raises him up on a chain over Dracula's coffin. He pulls back the flag off of it, and then he pulls out a little box, which I presume has Dracula's ashes in it. Yep. Which, by the way, we saw them all blow away, so they weren't in a pile. So he had to go a long way to collect the stuff around the house. Ooh, there's a little piece of him over here and a little bit over there. Ooh, this is just dust. Okay, that's not Dracula.
He had a dust devil. Yeah. He was like, "Get all of the master up."
Oh, don't worry, master. I'm vacuuming you up good.
And he dumps the ashes into the coffin.
Yeah, with the dirt that's already there. And
He's
then,
hauled up Alan's body.
yeah, man, I like this.
Fucking badass. And the censors had a big problem with this scene, but we don't see it. It's just, again, it's the actor does a fine job of physically selling, slashing across the throat with his dagger,
and then
just gouts.
Oh, just bucket after bucket of blood pours on.
Bright red hammer blood.
Yeah, man, this is what I tune in for. This is what I pay for in a Hammer movie. I want to see blood everywhere.
I'm sorry, but this sequence, the resurrection sequence, is good.
Oh.
And is almost why this movie exists, because I just dig every second of it. And it's actually, the effects are well done.
It's good.
It's a good scene.
The way we see Dracula's skeleton form, I mean, it's almost like an Invisible Man coming back kind of thing. We see the skeleton reform. We start to see the muscles and the veins and stuff coming until eventually it comes back as...
And very cannily, I mean, because basically they're doing some time lapse of seeing the body reform, and they start to, like, when it's going to get a little trickier to pull off, they have roiling smoke, also fog, inside of the coffin, which obscures some of the trickier bits, and then also allows them to, the final stage, which we assume would be full-on Christopher Lee, the entire coffin is now full of that smoke. So they do this kind of cut to the side of it when you finally see the hand come up and just smack on.
I do like that shot. That's very classic. Yes. This is great because I'm like, ooh, here we go. Finally, we're getting, but we still don't see him. I don't count this as seeing Dracula yet. This is not the time code for where we see Dracula. But
he would have been naked.
Hey, Jimmy Sangster's like, I wanna see that Dracula dong.
This is called equal representation. Yeah. I want full Dracula dong to make up for all of the nips.
Yeah, I said full nip, and I said full dong.
Chris is okay with it. I spoke to him in his trailer. He said he'll show it.
Yeah, I mean, pretty huge guy, Christopher Lee. I bet he's not. I bet he's all right.
We can only speculate.
Yeah, and I will wildly. I will speculate wildly about Christopher Lee's penis.
Read my fanfic. Read my /fanfic.
And then Dracula's huge dong. Some have said my prose needs work.
Yeah. I'm not sure what the Victorian literature equivalent of huge dong would be. His voluminous member.
Yeah.
His
swollen manhood.
Oh yeah, manhood, of course.
Yeah.
But there you.
Anyway, we apologize for that.
Yeah.
This show gets blue, man. You knew that. We earned that explicit tag. So
that's why we can't get a sponsorship from Casper Mattress.
No, they won't, man. They heard the show and they said way too dirty for us. So then we cut to Helen, who's just still alone in her room, like looking concerned. And then she's like, I guess because Alan doesn't come back, she's just like, well, fine, I'm gonna go out and look in the hallway. She opens the door to her bedroom, and Clove is just there, man. He's just right on it, and he's like,
"Your husband sent me to get you."
Yeah, it's
you need to come with me,
ma'am. You need to come with me. And all the time she's suspicious. This time she's like, "Oh, okay."
Well, I guess if Alan sent you.
Twice in this movie, people fall for this shit. Where Alan goes, a person you trust said for me to come get you. And for somebody to go, oh, yeah, all right, fine, yeah.
Sounds absolutely fine.
And so he leads her out of the bedroom, through the tapestry, down the stairs, and then he basically just pushes her into the room and locks her in, and she sees her husband dead. And this is a classic horror movie, long build-up to a scream. Like, she sees his drained body with its throat slit hanging upside down. She's like, and then
well, it is staggering, and it's stolen her breath, her very voice. she can't comprehend it for a few seconds.
I get that that's what they're going for, but it is very broad and theatrical.
Sure.
But as these movies can be, which I don't fault them for.
No, and I love a little bit of that. A little bit of it.
Yeah, a little bit of theatricality is fine. And so then she goes to run back upstairs. But what's this? Finally, 48 minutes into this movie, Christopher Lee as Dracula appears.
Oh, wait, is he in this movie?
48 minutes in, he is. 48
he does, in
minutes.
fact.
That's a long time.
It is.
For a 90-minute movie. It's more than halfway through this 90-minute movie before we get to Dracula. And there's not a lot going on anyway. Like, that's it. You could distract me. You could have Dracula show up halfway into a movie, and I could be distracted enough with other plot. But I was feeling it. I was with it for about 15, maybe 20 minutes. Once it started to get from 20 to 30 and on, I was like, let's get to Dracula.
Yeah. It was a long time coming, and as you say, if this is how long you're going to make me wait for the main attraction, then he better be just he should rule the entire last chunk of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't quite.
No.
Because he's still there's screen time for Clove.
Yeah.
And Helen actually gets more to do as a vampire lady, spoiler, than our Prince of Darkness gets to do as the vampire king.
Yep. Yeah.
Sad.
Indeed. You know what I would have loved? Ooh, Dracula comes back, just fucking kills Clove right away because he needs the nourishment, man. Like, he did all that for him, and Dracula's just like, I'm sorry, you're just a blood bag to me.
I like that too.
Yeah.
I'm down with that
shit. That would have
been
like, oh shit, Dracula's back.
You know what I would have liked? I would have liked a Clove and Ludwig, who we haven't met and never existed.
God, Ludwig.
But he's retroactively worked into the Dracula story. But I would have loved a Clove Ludwig face off because apparently Dracula's had several.
No,
familiars,
I'm Dracula's best friend.
It's like, no, I'm Dracula's best. I wanted that. But anyway.
Yeah, Ludwig, we'll talk about. He kind of ends up sort of being the Renfield.
Yeah, as if there had been a Renfield in the previous, Dracula, which there wasn't.
It is almost like, remember Ludwig? No.
Well, he was a big part of the story. I can't believe you missed him.
So, Helen stands there, and Dracula approaches. He bares his fangs. He's got crazy red eyes throughout this whole movie.
Yeah, he does.
Like they look like crazy bloodshot red eyes, which I kind of like. It's certainly a creepy look. Maybe after this we don't need him, but I like the idea of him coming back and being crazed.
Yeah, if that had been, if that had actually been a thought out, purposeful thing, I would applaud it. Unfortunately, it seems to be like, no, it's just how we're playing him in this movie. I kind of like that concept of like, well, if he's first come back, it is all about hunger.
Yeah, because
he has been gone, so he could be more animalistic until he centers himself once he's fed, and then he's like, right.
Yeah, I also would have liked. The way you could have played this is he's getting back into the swing of things throughout the movie. He's not quite full powered Dracula, and we see him slowly evolving, but having trouble getting back in the swing of being Dracula. That might have been kind of an interesting way to play it. I know I keep writing better movies.
We keep basically improving them, and way after the fact. And they again, I put my email address out there. No one is getting in touch with me.
No, not yet. Yeah, we're looking to do a rewrite on Dracula, Prince of Darkness.
Oh my God, I got an email from the ghost of Anthony Hines.
I've read your pages and they're wonderful.
You guys have it on the ball. Quick, into the time machine, back to 1965. Help us fix this turkey.
So he approaches her and does the very universal kind of thing, I think, of putting the cape up so we don't see him bite her.
Yeah, it is.
I want to see him bite somebody.
I know that we eventually get there, but this is sort of weirdly throwbackish of him doing the, let's provide a little privacy. I'll lift the cape and move in on you. But
can we talk about the fact
so now
this is the only person that Dracula bites in this movie too?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. He doesn't bite Diana. He actually tries to do the full on vampire bonding with her, but
Yeah.
he doesn't bite her first.
Oh, I do like
Very
that
interesting.
scene though. That is good.
That I do too, and that scene
Look, when
also
Lee is in the movie, I'm digging it.
caused some problems with the censors because the original version had her with blood on her mouth when she backs up, and they were like,
Ooh.
"No, sir." So instead, you got the more she pulls back. And
I do
there's
like the
nothing
idea
on
of
her face.
like moving towards the blood is one thing, but then once we see the blood on her, well, that's downright pornographic.
That is just. You may as well just show them fucking.
In fact, we'd have less of a problem with that, honestly.
It is 1966 and all. We must get with the times.
So yes to fucking, no to blood drinking.
Movies, but anyway.
Yeah. So
anyway.
then it cuts to morning, and Charles and Diana are downstairs going, "Well, I don't understand. Where are Alan and Helen? They should be right here. They missed breakfast."
Again, he, as in Charles, he says like, "Yeah, their bags aren't even in their room," and again, there's no concern on his face. He's just kind of like going, "Oh well, more breakfast for us, I suppose." It's quite.
Because then Diana's like, "We should just leave," and he goes, "What, without them? Well, that'd be quite rude." This guy's not getting it.
No.
Takes him a while to get it in this movie. And then so finally she does convince them to leave. And they go back to where the carriage is supposed to meet them in front of that shack. And he goes, "All right, you stay here. I'm going to go back and look for Helen and Alan."
Yeah, I don't quite know, like, the obviously I don't know the distances involved, but to the idea that, coming all the way down from the castle to that shack and then saying, "Hey, you stay in the shack. I'm going to go back up to the castle where I just was to do a little bit more digging around." I was like, Jesus Christ, what an afternoon this guy's, planned for himself. Why didn't you just do the further searching while you were still up there?
Right. Nope. And so he goes, and she goes, "Well, then I'll come with you." He goes, No. You must stay here. And she's like, "Okay, fine." And so he goes back to the castle, and a carriage pulls up next to Diana, but it's not the carriage that they were looking for. It's Clove, baby. It's Clove at the and she's like, "Clove, what are you doing here?" And she says, Clove says, "Charles sent me."
Yeah, your husband wants me to get you.
I'm sorry.
Jeez.
There are 3 times in the movie this works, actually, now that I'm remembering. Because, she's like, "Okay, I guess I'll get in the carriage then." Despite the fact she was the one who's like, "We have to leave right now," just a second ago. And now she's like, "Well, if Charles says it's all right, I guess, I'll get in the carriage."
I guess so. Yeah, let's do this thing.
So... yeah, she goes with him. We cut back to the castle, and Charles is snooping around. He finds Dracula's lair now because it was only hidden behind a tapestry.
Right.
So, and he sneaks down there, and he sees Dracula's coffin, but then he sees, in a very Sweeney Todd fashion,
it's so crazy,
a hand sticking out of a mostly closed trunk.
It's the same trunk that Clove had been dragging around.
Yeah.
And I just, the thing about things like Sweeney Todd or this, where it's like, I'm sorry, are killers that lazy? They're like going, I got most of them in there. It's the idea that you would toss a corpse into a trunk and like going, yeah, okay, so a hand is sticking out. I don't have the time to move that arm.
I have so many more shaving appointments, Mrs. Lovett. I can't fully get him in there.
I have to make more soup upstairs for these fucking Brits, the ones that are still alive.
Yeah, I have to make them their breakfast. Look, Dracula, I tried. All right, the trunk wouldn't close. I had to start the sausage. What do you want me to do?
This is the scene where Charles opens the trunk, sees his dead brother. This is where finally some kind of sense of things have taken a
Yeah.
turn,
Oh
shows up
my.
on his face where he's suddenly afraid and freaked out. And I'm like, man, I would have been the first night,
Yeah.
the first night when
I
the
think
horses ran away.
Honestly, the
But
horseless carriage itself, or the driverless
yeah,
carriage itself, is pretty. If it was a horseless
but
carriage, that'd really be something.
finally, Charles, this dim-witted Brit, is like going, oh.
The thing I love about this too, throughout this, as Charles is poking around, we keep cutting to inside Dracula's coffin as he like opens his eyes, and I just love the idea of Dracula being like, what? Who woke me up? Like he's just like, somebody's making noise out there. Keep it down out there.
Some of us are trying to sleep.
Dracula with noisy neighbors is just a funny. It's just like, hey, some of us work nights. Now I have to put my white noise machine on.
Yes, the soothing sounds of the sea. Oh, the crashing waves.
Well,
I can hear you stomping around out there.
get that dog under control. For the love of God. Yeah, soothing sounds of the ocean. Flowing water. That's not a threat to him.
Oh, exactly.
Somebody switched it to ocean mode. No.
I was okay with the forest at night, and I was okay with the whale song, but I can't stand the sound of running water. So yeah,
you will get to the water, but I don't love it.
No.
So yeah, he finds this jammed in the trunk. He runs out. Then Clove locks. Clove is like, yes, your husband's right in there. And then he just closes the door and locks it behind her. He's like, yeah, she's trapped. And this is where Helen first reveals herself now as a vampire in an even gauzier outfit. Because now she's in.
Mm-hmm.
I do like the idea of like, well, you're Dracula's bride now. Here's your outfit. Because they all sort of, in these movies, they all sort of get this white, diaphanous outfit that is just like, it's what Dracula likes.
And they're going, what are you, like a size 6?
Yeah. It really gets the master going, if you know what I mean.
Just like having whole racks and then like going, this is going to be a little tight around the bust, but that's okay. He likes that too.
Yeah, it is. He likes when you show off the goods.
She shows up, and this is some of the stuff that I do. I love a vampire movie where it is about once you have turned, you're you, not you. You're the evil you, and it's all about the come, give me a hug. It's like I'm so cold, and aren't we friends and family? Come here. It's just she's doing the whole thing like,
yeah,
it's so good to see you. Come here, and you're like, oh, it's the I'm kind of seducing you, even though we've never been on that level before. So yeah, I love that shit.
Because she goes to try to bite her when, oh no, not cool, because Dracula pops in and he's hissing.
He has nothing much to do in this movie thanks to the lack of dialogue, but he does a lot with these kinds of scenes where he comes in and he's like, I'm the master here.
Because
he doesn't say anything. He's like, that's my meal. You get the fuck out.
The reason I love Lee as Dracula so much has mostly to do with his physicality in the part.
Yeah.
And he
does the commanding hand.
Yeah. And he does one of my favorite things here, the way he bounds down these steps with that cape flowing. The same way he came at Van Helsing in the first movie. I love that where he's like, and so that hiss stops her, and then he's just like right on her. He just takes those steps 2 at a time, Yeah. And those big long legs striding down and the cape behind him, and you're just like, that point he doesn't have to say anything. He is threatening. Lee is naturally threatening, just because he's a big, imposing guy, and he can bring the intensity to it. I do think his just presence as Dracula is always impressive to me.
Yeah, very true. And that's one of the only things that works in a movie with no dialogue for him to speak and say.
I do wish he had dialogue in scenes where he's not doing those things, but
I dislike Dracula specifically, but basically any vampire being reduced to hissing animalistic creatures, simply because we have enough monster tropes that are brainless. You know, you've got mummies that don't speak, and you've got werewolves that are animals, and you have Frankenstein's monster, which technically, if you kept it like the novel, should speak.
Right.
But most of the time is very simplistic or childlike.
Right.
Dracula should be the one that can full on monologue, that should have goals and motivations.
We both love a supervillain Dracula. I love Dracula. He's a mastermind. That's what I like about him. Yeah, that is the thing. He's the guy who in Monster Rally movies should be commanding the other monsters. That makes sense. So he runs down here, and he just grabs Diana. But then Charles shows up, and he's like, "You, stop it!" and Dracula's like, "Oh, they caught me." He really does do it like, "Oop."
Yeah.
Oh no, he's on to me. And so then he's standing there, and I do like that Dracula having stopped. You see Charles almost be like, "Well, I didn't actually expect him to stop, so now I don't really know what the next move is here." Let her go. And as he sort of reaches his hand out, Helen tries to bite him now.
Right.
And then Dracula, this is cool. Christopher Lee just grabs this guy and throws him across the room at the fireplace. Yeah. Pretty cool.
Yeah, it is.
Which the guy who plays who's our guy here? It's Francis Matthews in the Shout Factory documentary does talk about how terrifying filming that was because
he very nearly rolls into the open fire.
That's exactly the point he was making. Yeah, he really got tossed right at that fire.
He clears the love seat.
Yeah.
But he rolls frighteningly close to just an open, non-gated, roaring fire.
Yep. He didn't love that.
Sure not.
And so then
one take, and that was it. I was done.
Nope, we're done.
The fear you see on my face was real.
Yeah. We had seen earlier there were crossed swords on the wall, and so Charles grabs one of those swords, and is now holding Dracula with that. And this is pretty cool when he takes a swing at Dracula, and Dracula just catches his arm, and then grabs the sword and snaps the blade in half. That's pretty cool. That I like. Though I would have liked, once again, some dialogue in here where he's like,
wouldn't mind it.
Anything, any kind of thing about how that sword's not going to do anything or whatever, but take a swing if you must, something like that.
Yeah, sure. I like a swaggering Dracula.
Yeah, but the thing that Lee does convince, as we've said before, and definitely here, is the power of Dracula.
Yes.
The way he just grabs that guy's arm and breaks that sword, and then he's just like, "What?"
Awesome. It is awesome.
Yeah. That I like him not speaking, is breaking the sword and just being like, "Yeah, I'm the alpha."
You also, around this exact same time, Helen is making a play for Diana, right?
Yeah, yes.
Reaching for her, and then suddenly shrieks.
Yeah.
Pulls back, and she has a cross burn on the inside of her arm.
Yeah.
And then Diana figures it out. She's like, "Oh shit, you don't like this thing I've got." So she holds up her little crucifix.
And then Charles sees this, and he grabs the broken blade of the sword and the handle, and he puts them together to make the cross, which backs Dracula away. And he's like, "That's
basically
it. We're getting out of here."
Intuitive vampire defense, where they're like, "Oh, that works. Okay, great." Yeah, so they're backing out of the way, and basically it's like Dracula and Helen are just like.
But then I like, as they're walking out the door, from the front door comes Clove with his trusty blade, and he goes to stab Charles, who just turns around and decks him, and he drops.
Yeah.
But he hits him right in the nose, and Clove drops, and they do escape.
Thank you.
My favorite moment, though, is after they escape, like Dracula's standing there watching him, like, damn. And Helen comes up to be like, "Oh, my poor man," or whatever, and puts her arms around him. And Dracula's just like, "Get away from me."
Yes, again, this movie isn't giving him a lot to do, but Lee will play these beats.
Mm-hmm.
I like the fact that Lee's Dracula, and Dracula is interpreted in so many different ways, and I love a lot of interpretations. I do like a Dracula. It's not my preference, but the non-romantic Dracula,
Right.
the one who is just about his goals, his evil, and of course, there's a seductive quality. The ones he chooses to keep as brides or thralls or servants, men or women who are going to serve him, he doesn't care about. It's exactly what you were saying about it would have been great if he immediately killed Clove.
Right.
I like that, where it's like, well, you turn me into a vampire, you are my lord and master, so I'm going to try to be like a wife to you. And he's like, fuck off.
Yeah.
I don't care about you.
I'm not looking for cuddles, lady.
Yeah, it's brutal, and you're like going, oh,
those
poor
are the
Helen.
moments that I like, is because they're little touches like that that speak to some kind of character for Dracula.
And since he is obviously unable to speak for at least the first 48 hours after resurrection,
we all knew that about him. So
he gets his little moments where he can, and I did like that.
Charles and Diana are speeding away in a carriage when Charles loses control of the carriage, and they're thrown from it.
Look, he's drunk. Either that, or I was thinking, finally, a movie that shows us the vampires' control over random rocks and stones.
Oh.
It's just like they get away from the castle at a good clip, and then finally the coach hits this rock, and then that's it.
And later we'll have a coach accidentally hit a rock too.
Yes.
Yeah, they pull that move twice. That's a sangster move right there.
Yeah. And then I don't know, there's a rock or something.
Whatever. The movie needs to end. What his memoir is actually called "Do You Want It Good or Do You Want It Tuesday?" is actually the title of Jimmy Sangster's memoir, which is great.
It makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
I know that he's a good writer, but he was a writer who's almost all his career was doing stuff for low budget or smaller budget films that shot quick.
Yeah.
So he was cranking stuff out. Some of it's gold.
Some of it's gold, and you could see maybe if he worked on a bigger picture and had a longer amount of time, this guy could have really given us some great movies.
Absolutely.
But his work on the writing of the Wonder Woman series was really the height of his guess. So yeah, they crashed.
I watched those episodes recently that he did.
Did you?
They were good. They were as good as the other ones. I have been rewatching the 1970s Wonder Woman TV show,
which I like. I think it is admirable what they were trying to do at the time.
I of course love the first season, which is set in World War II,
right?
More than the others. But the thing that drives me crazy is I know they were going for camp. It's the fact that everyone has 70s hair.
Oh yes.
Even if they're playing totally serious, like I am a Nazi spy. I'm like, yeah, but 1943, and you got this feathered 1970s hair. Take this much more effort, maybe.
Well, we should go down to the discotheque later. Yeah.
I have the new album by the Earth, Wind, and Fire. Und Fire.
I just love that John Travolta with his
Donna Summer is one sexy lady. Anyway, back
Nazis.
to Dracula.
That's something.
Disco Nazis.
That's something.
Yeah, make sure you trademark that before this podcast.
I'm already on the WGA website here and making sure we get
people will grab Disco Nazis.
Yeah, that's gonna get stolen.
Yep.
So Diana's unconscious. Charles is unharmed. So Charles is now just carrying Diana through the trees of this forest for several dissolves. So who knows how long they're wandering before they come upon Father Shandor, who ultimately finds them.
Oh, thank God.
I'm back in the movie!
You thought I was gone, eh? Well, my butt is toasty now, and I'm ready to fight vampires.
You know, as we're doing this impression, I want Matt Berry to play Father Shandor.
Yes.
Since he's got that kind of boisterous quality.
He's the guy. He's the fucking guy.
That guy.
But could he play a vampire hunter after now playing an iconic vampire himself?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, Laszlo is one of my all-time favorite vampires now.
So very much.
Matt!
shouting it before he transforms every time.
Nobody else
is one
does
of my
it,
favorite
just
things.
him. I still stand by Jaggy Daytona is one of the funniest things I've ever seen.
Is one of the best episodes of anything ever. Okay.
Yeah, just hilarious. So yeah, he finds them, and I love his first reaction is, "I warned you about that castle."
Yes.
He pulls an "I told you so" immediately upon finding them. She's unconscious. He's like, "What did I fucking say about that castle?"
Now your brother's dead, huh? Sister-in-law too, of course.
Well,
yes.
It's hard to be sympathetic to someone so stupid. So he takes them back to his monastery, and this is the scene that Matthews says is the worst piece of acting he's ever seen by anyone, let alone himself. Is this sequence here with Father Shandor, when his immediate reaction after all of this is to be like, "I just can't believe it," because he's going, "Oh, I just think after all he's been through, I should have played it broken and winded and just drained." And he's like, I shouldn't have let Terrence Fisher give me any dialogue. I should have just been almost catatonic. And he said
that's a good point.
He's like, "I remember sitting at the premiere with my lovely wife, and her turning to me and saying, 'Oh, why did you let Terry give you those terrible lines?' And I said, 'I know, honey, I know.'"
He was so good right up to that point.
Yeah. And I go,
"You've lost."
yeah, I see his point, but I didn't watch the movie and go, "Oof, this reeks what he's doing here." But I agree, it could have been better. But to be fair, at no point in the movie does he ever play anything that subtle. So,
No, exactly. But I will say his instincts about that after the fact are correct.
Yeah. And
but no, it's not the worst piece of acting ever.
Ever done by any actor, let alone me. So I can't bear to watch it. I found that whole story adorable in the way he talks about, like, "Ugh, I was off that day." So this is where we get the scene that has to be in every fucking vampire movie, where Father Shandor is like, "Let me tell you about vampires."
Yep.
And
I did find it somewhat refreshing that in this one, it's not a huge list of things. There's a little bit of that, but we do have Charles say, "I've heard of vampires. I thought they were just legends," which allows them to kind of go, "Great, we don't need to break down everything, because at least in a folkloric way, this British guy knows the basic concepts of the undead."
Right. And so this is where I have some questions about Father Shandor, though, because he's like, in the scene in the pub, he goes, "Why, Dracula hasn't been seen in 10 years. And then here he pulls out a book and he goes, "Dracula was last seen, let me see here, 10 years ago." And he has to search through the book. I'm like, wait a minute. What?
Yeah.
He knew this information a second ago. Why is he now going like, "Oh, when was it? When was it again?"
I'm getting to that age where I have to look things up a lot.
I feel
what
like,
do you call it? A book. Yes.
I feel like I knew this just the other day. What was it?
It was a nice round number.
Yeah. Divisible by 5 for sure.
Yes. 25. No,
it wasn't that long. Get it together, Shandor. You know that's wrong. You're embarrassing yourself.
And they're like, "This is part of that was cut. It wasn't due to the censors." Are like going, "Why do we have this guy dealing with early onset Alzheimer's? Why are we spending so much time with this monk trying to remember?"
And then Keir is just like, "Why did you cut that? That was my best work. Those are my scenes. My whole character was built around that reveal that he has early onset dementia."
It was humanizing.
It's why I took the part. Those scenes Sangster wrote, they were beautiful. It was a tragic figure. At the end, when he forgot what he was doing while fighting Dracula, had to be reminded.
Well, I'll have a talk with the writers of the comic strip. I'm sure that Shandor's dementia will be a big part of it.
Oh, I would love it. We find out this guy was writing the Shandor Adventures. I had so many ideas for where he could go. I just needed an outlet for them.
This was before the days of the big, continuing series character for his film. This is, James Bond notwithstanding. So if there was ever going to be more Shandor, I had to write it.
Father Shandor in. I just kept saying you could make 1 million of these.
Well, I look forward to reading them. They better be good.
I know. They do actually excite me after watching this movie. That idea is very exciting. So this is where he brings up. He goes, "Oh, you could stab them in the heart with a stake. You could expose them to sunlight. They'll drown in running water." And I wrote this down because I went, "What now? This is not an oft-used, hardly ever way to kill a vampire."
It's not really that's not from the folklore. This is a bastardization. The folklore is they can't cross running water.
Yes.
Which is why, to me, I think it's hilarious that Dracula would have a castle surrounded by running water, which would mean that he was never able to leave his home.
Oh, well, I was always a bit of a homebody.
So this is Sangster just, it's like, well, running water is a thing. They drown in running water. Okay, well, that's not... All right, you just made that up.
They talk about this in the Shout Factory thing. They said, the thing about Jimmy was he always thought a stake in the heart that wasn't big enough for Dracula to go out with. He was always looking for a different way to kill Dracula. So if you notice in all the films, the other vampires die by stakings, but Dracula goes out in a grander fashion.
I don't think that's necessarily a wrong way to go either. It just makes you work harder. And again, a stake through the chest could be multiple things. You could end up doing lots of various things to impale him and da-da-da-da. And they do in future films. They also do the thing with, at least in Brides of Dracula, with the shadow of the cross. Which,
I love that, man.
Again, physics doesn't.
I know, but it's such a comic booky moment, and I love it.
Yes. I know, but I do like
Peter Cushing reach onto that thing and pull it down. It's very exciting.
I think that Sangster was very smart and good about stretching that. But this one, as we'll see when we get to the end of it, it's like
this one bothered me a lot. I did not like this at all. So he says yes, and I also thought in my head though. I'm like, that's one I haven't heard before. I bet that's how Dracula dies in this movie.
Yeah. Since that's the outlier, that's the new introduced one. I think that'll be the way he dies in this movie.
So we get that, and then we hard cut to Clove driving two coffins in a carriage towards somewhere. We don't really know where, but it just cuts to them. And then they get to the monastery, and Clove's like, "Come on, you got to let me in." And they're like, whoa. We can't let you in here. We can't just let anybody into this monastery. You can, hang out outside of it if you have to and spend the night.
Well, yes, the brothers of the monastery have already been given the command by Shandor not to let anyone in, because Shandor's like, ooh, Dracula's up and about. So... yeah, that was a protective measure, but them being monks and can't just immediately accuse this person of being a thrall of Dracula, go, well, we can't let you in, but if you want to camp out right outside, we'll bring you some food and make you comfortable. He's like, all right, that'll have to do. Thanks a lot. Thanks. Thank you.
Look, I'm sorry, Dracula. That's the best I could do.
No, really, thanks.
Yeah.
Sounds nice. I don't know if my sarcasm is getting across.
I just like the idea of Dracula being, you were supposed to get me into the monastery. I don't know what to tell you, man. They wouldn't listen as far as they let me go.
I don't know what to tell you, man. Have we already been introduced to Ludwig? Or
no, it is the next scene after this. That is the very next thing we get to. And I have to say, when Ludwig was introduced, my first thought was, oh no. Because he's introduced in a very... silly manner, and I thought, here we go, the comic relief character.
He is Not one of the monks, but he has been living at the monastery and kept under lock and key, but they keep saying things like he's really not that dangerous.
Yeah.
He had been with Dracula. He had worked for Dracula back 10 years ago, but since then we've looked after him, and he's a brilliant artist.
Because
And
when we
so they
introduced to
employ
him,
him.
he's finishing the cover on a book.
Yeah,
And he's like,
he is
and he's doing like a whole
illustrating.
like, like he's, and I was just like, as
Yes.
soon as they cut to this guy, I went, oh shit.
Yeah, because he's kind of daffy and has a goofy mustache, and he sings to himself and says gibberish.
Yeah.
And he eats flies.
Well, yes, he does, because I do like, he catches this fly and he puts it in a thing, and that's when Shandor walks in. He's like, really, Ludwig? Flies?
Again?
Yeah. I thought we were past this. He says everything with that level of gravitas.
He has brought Charles to meet Ludwig because he basically said, there's someone here who knows more about Dracula than even me, and it's this guy because he worked with him or whatever. So that's why isn't that why he brought Charles to meet Ludwig?
Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, the daffy guy is like, oh, how's it going? Yeah, blah, blah, eats a fly and then denies that he's eaten a fly.
I did no such thing. He's got this we've seen this guy before, right? This actor.
Have we?
His name sounds familiar to me. His name is...
All right, I got to...
Thorley Walters is his name. We're going to see him again because he's in Frankenstein Created Woman as well. But I'm pretty sure we've seen him before because I remember the name Thorley. And now we do the fun part of the show where I'm just scrolling through IMDb.
Yeah, I'm doing
certain
same thing.
Certain that he was in something before. Oh, I feel like there's a bit on Star Trek: The Next Conversation where when Andy Secunda, he's like, "Oh, I know him from something big."
Phantom of the Opera.
That's it. Yes, he plays Latimer in Phantom of the Opera. And because the other thing I remember was that he played Dr. Watson to Christopher Lee's Sherlock Holmes.
Right.
Which is So they've already done that. I was going to say they'll reteam. They actually have already done that. That was in '62, Sherlock Holmes and the Deadly Necklace. Which that's something. Watching these makes me want to go back and watch Christopher Lee as Holmes.
Well, I wouldn't mind that myself. As because the Hammer Films book that I've been using, it's of course about all of their films, and I'm scrolling to the next one that we'll do on the podcast. But as I scroll, it does constantly. There are ones I'm like going, oh man, I wouldn't mind watching The Reptile.
Right.
It's like, yeah, I know it's bad shit, but I want to, and I know we're going to skip over all the Cave Woman and all of their prehistoric movies, which are nuts and awful. But part of me is like, that is cheesy stuff that I remember watching on Saturday afternoons as as an 8-year-old.
Sure.
That I kind of like, I wouldn't mind watching that.
I will say I did buy while doing this show, I did buy the collector's edition of the Hammer Hound of the Baskervilles with Cushing and Lee.
Nice.
Which I've always loved that version anyway. But this inspired me to actually track down it's only been released in Britain, this collector's edition actually. So yeah, so I had to have it shipped over here, but
is it Region 2 or Region 1?
It is Region 2, but I do have a region-free Blu-ray player because this is not the only thing I've had shipped over from other countries.
All right, humble brag.
I'm a nerd who needs certain things that aren't available in the U.S.
I understand all of your Japanese porn.
But I told you never to speak of that.
You'll just edit that out.
As I do every time you speak, people think this is a one-man show.
John's been talking to himself for 4 hours.
You know what? Because of the power outage and stuff that was here, not the last time, but the time before that, we were recording, and my sister was staying with me because her power was out at her house and stuff like that. And she was just in the other room watching a movie, but she only could hear my side of the conversation. And she said, it sounded like you're insane. Because I would say something and then be like, ha, 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 ha.
I'm sure it does seem. I mean, I wonder what my neighbors think. Whenever we do the podcast, these are pretty thin walls. I think they must assume I'm having like a 4-hour phone conversation.
Right. Yeah.
And only once a week too. So I'm sure there must be
and
like
the voices and the like.
Yes, please shut up. Oh, he's doing something British now.
Again.
Oh God, he's saying
your accent needs work.
Oh, what's all this then? And they're like going, I hate him so much. But yes,
the weirdos at it again.
Weirdos. Ludwig is apparently harmless, which turns out to be
because they say that they say because they're locking the door after they leave after tying from Ludwig, and Charles is like, why do you have to lock him in there? He seems like a harmless guy. He's like, oh, he's perfectly harmless, but he has been known to erupt from time to time, which made me go, interesting. Okay, I hope we get to see him erupt. We never do anything that I would call an eruption, which bums me out because I wanted to see this daffy character like start killing people.
I wouldn't have minded that. What bothered me most about
throats of these monks, give that to me.
It kind of shows this is very much like one of those slasher films where the lapses in logic of a character can offend. Because there's a smart person writing this, but you still have things like Shandor knows the ins and outs of vampirism. He has someone in his monastery who was a thrall of Dracula's. Dracula has been resurrected. And Shandor himself will say, oh, Dracula can't even get in here because only someone who lives here can invite him in. And you're like going, dude, you just introduced us, the audience, and Charles to someone who is like Dracula's ex-right-hand man.
Because we see Ludwig, and then he says that, and I'm going like, oh, so he's the guy that's going to let him in. Exactly. Yeah, it is like a character only introduced to immediately do the thing he has to do.
Yeah, but why Shandor isn't immediately like going, oh shit, we should probably lock him somewhere safer because he could totally invite Dracula into this monastery.
And actually, even after he invites Dracula in, he keeps letting Shandor off the hook so he can do more stuff. And at a certain point, I'm going, you have to kill Shandor. Or no, not Shandor. I'm sorry. You have to kill Ludwig. Shandor, you have to kill Ludwig. Dude,
indeed.
He has to go. Like, he is a threat, man.
Bro. I know he's your friend.
Yeah.
He's gotta go.
He's gotta go.
Hey, Ludwig.
He's been hanging out with that Dracula guy, and he's bad news.
Bro, you gotta cut him loose. Yeah. You gotta cut him loose.
I know.
Say goodbye.
I know you went to high school with him, all right? I know.
I know he's your boy. He's your boy.
You're my boy, Ludwig. Oh, Ludwig? He's my boy.
I'm not even as tired as I normally am when we do this, but I'm getting loopier earlier in the podcast.
Unfortunately for me, he's Dracula's boy too. Uh-oh.
We have something in common. A boy. He's both of our boys.
We gotta finish this one way or the other, Dracula. Who gets Ludwig?
I apologize to our listeners because this is not the entertainment that you're after.
Oh, I disagree.
Okay. Maybe
this far into the show, this far into us doing this show, you have to expect this.
This is our 5th year of being on the air, and people are in for a penny, in for a pound.
Yeah.
Okay,
the
so
fact
where
that
are
I
we
just
now?
looked at the time for the recording and we're not 3 hours into the show already makes me feel all right. So
I know.
that sometimes we're on these riffs and I'm like, we've already done 240. We're still all right. So let's see. Oh yeah, Ludwig opens the door for Dracula. He's basically like, "What's that? What? Yes."
Yes, master.
Yeah.
Oh, of course. I know it's been 10 years. I know I look rough. Shut up. You're a meanie.
Well, I haven't had my things to take care of me. They don't even give me a comb. They don't trust me with one.
What's that? You don't seem to be saying anything, master. Why so quiet? Cat got your tongue?
Oh,
no cat, dialogue?
A cat actually tore out your tongue. I'm terribly sorry to have brought that up. It must be very triggering.
Triggering.
that was another scene cut out, was when a cat actually tore out Dracula's tongue.
Oh yes.
Yeah. That Dracula versus cat scene was just too much.
Dracula versus cat.
At the same time that Dracula's been let in, Diana's in her room and she hears a tap tap tapping at the window. And this is my favorite scene with Helen. I think this is the best scene with her when she's like, "Oh, Diana, it's so cold out here.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so cold." And she's even like, "Don't worry, I totally left Dracula. Like, that's way over.
That's Dunzo. He's a meanie. I tried to comfort him, and he smacked me away."
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, you were so right about him. Yeah.
I'd much rather be with you.
Yeah.
Nothing lesbian about that. Nothing. Just I miss my sister-in-law.
And then I like this moment where, like, she goes over to the window, stupid, and starts to open a little bit, and Helen has zero chill and just immediately bites Diana in the hand upon even her, like, barely opening the window.
We can just assume that she's such a newbie vampire. She does not have this stuff down. She's like, a hand is in range.
I need that sweet blood. And once again, she bites her. And then Dracula just comes up from behind Helen and throws her out of the scene, essentially. And then I thought, oh, that's cool. Then Dracula's not cool when the door opens and Shandor and Charles run in, and Dracula's just like, "Oh, shit," and runs off. Oh, cheese it. Because I don't understand. Yes. He came in. I guess did he come into the out? Like, where does he comes in, but then he still needs to come in again through the window?
I didn't get that either. Yeah. And actually, I think that I may have glossed over it.
Because, it's just like, it's weird because it's like, yes, come in, and we see him walk into the monastery, but then he's outside the window and doesn't come in and just kill everybody at this point. He runs away.
Yeah.
Because it's like, what are they going to do if he just hopped in that window and was like, "I'm taking her"? What are they going to do? They don't have anything to fight him with in that moment. He could have just grabbed her.
Bring up such an excellent point.
Yeah, this was another moment where I'm like, oh, Dracula's not cool in this movie. Because he's just like, "Oh, people hit you." Dracula running, like, Dracula skittering away is not a good look for him.
I have never enjoyed, I like a Dracula that is self-aware enough to be self-protective.
Yes,
obviously, but someone who's cunning and knows when to retreat.
But that's when more movies of a fading in the shadows, not a wide-eyed. Right. Oh fuck! And then like like he almost like runs into place for a second like a cartoon, and then speeds off.
I don't think it helped that they had him go, which is the only dialogue he has in the entire film.
Felt very, very. That wasn't really true to his character. Christopher Lee's going, do you really want me to do this? Because I feel this is sort of character destroying. Kind of an insult to the entire legacy of Dracula. But okay, you're the boss. So Dracula runs off. And then we get what is just Hammer's fucking obsession at this point in vampire movies. Helen's been bitten in the hand, and Shandor's like, "Come here!" And he grabs a lamp and burns the bite mark. They love this shit, man. It's in every one of their vampire movies now.
Because weirdly, I think maybe, well, I don't know the provenance, but I think this is maybe something Sangster came up with himself, and he's like, "I like that."
Yeah, oh, it's true, because it's first introduced in Brides of Dracula.
Oh, except for that's not...
Is that not Sangster? I thought that was Sangster.
Oh, that is Sangster.
Yeah, it's Sangster.
It's Sangster with a couple other guys, right?
Right.
Yes, so it's probably like his pet idea.
Yeah.
And he's probably just very proud of it. Like, yeah, well, I'm introducing that, and it will always be in the mythology from here on out.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Take that.
He loves this idea. I mean, and it is a cool idea, but it feels like here it's done like she gets bitten it gets burned. It's so inconsequential to anything. It's so easily handled that
I know.
it's like he set up an entire scene just to do it this time.
Now, what's interesting though is that I mean, because it's never agreed upon by any source as to what constitutes, a vampire attack, or that she bit her.
Yeah,
just bit her.
Yeah,
there was no drawing of blood. There was no feeding.
Right, bit
it
her
was
in the
literally
hand, yeah.
like, so if it's an infection, maybe
she got nipped like an angry dog. It's like,
but what Dracula does later to turn someone into a vampire is it's the exchange.
I feed on you, you feed on me. That's how I've always done.
Exactly. So quite know why just getting bitten by a vampire without any blood issuing either way, why do you have to go burn yourself for that?
Yeah.
It's not like you're going to become a vampire from that little bite.
I mean, I guess maybe safer, better to be safe than sorry here or something. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good saying. I think you ought to.
It also it feels like every time they do one, copyright that. Oh yeah, I'm gonna make shirts. But here it's also just the least. It's so casual as opposed to the first time we see it. It's fucking Cushing, and he's readying himself, and he's got to brand himself with this thing almost. Well, here it's just like, let me get this lamp.
Yeah. This is very brief though.
I just feel like every time they do it, it's a less dramatic version of it.
Yeah. This is just like, give me your arm. Yeah. Here you go. And I'll put this over here. And it's actually, she handles it like, she's like, but it's her husband. It's Charles is like going, okay, come on. Yeah. Oh,
what the hell are you doing?
What the hell are you doing? Cut that out.
Yeah. You fucking psycho. He's just like, I'm with Dracula now. I don't like this. And that creates the whole...
No one burns my wife and gets away with it.
All Dracula wants to do is make her live forever. You're fucking burning her, you nut job. You're worse than he is. So then Shandor goes outside. Because he's like, well, has anyone come here and to this place recently? This one monk's like, we didn't let anybody in, but we are letting a guy stay out front. And Shandor's like, I'm sorry, no one told me about this.
Just a guy with a cart that has a couple of coffins in the back. Is that a problem?
Shandor goes outside to...
Should I not have done that?
Yeah. Was that wrong? I gotta plead ignorance on this one. No one told me.
Because I'm kind of feeling that vibe from you, like I did something wrong.
I don't like that look you're giving me. So Shandor and Charles go outside, and he goes into the back of this carriage that has the coffins in it, and he just sticks a cross in each coffin. He's like, there you go. So now
I'll take care of that.
Yeah, it'll be sunlight soon, and they'll want to come back here, and it won't be able to because they can't get in the coffins, and then they're just gonna get burnt up by the sun. So this is really, we call this a long play in the vampire hunting biz.
Let's watch from inside.
So he puts the crosses in the coffins, and then one of the other monks comes up and goes, hey, we've caught the woman out in the bar. And he's like, but Dracula? No, we don't know where he is. And they're like, oh, well, we'll take what we can get. Let's kill her. But
and he actually says to Charles, like, you'll want to come see this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a whole thing where he's like, you'll see it is not your sister-in-law. And you'll see. It's almost like you'll see how we deal with vampires around here. And
what follows is probably the other good scene in this movie.
Oh, this is a great scene. And this is the scene that I'm blanking on everyone's names, even though I knew him a second ago.
Barbara Shelley.
Barbara Shelley says this individual scene she thinks is her best piece of acting in anything.
This is what I'll say about it. And again, I've seen lots of these movies. But I don't pretend to be an expert. I believe we're seeing one of the first of this type of vampire scene. This becomes a trope, but the writhing, animalistic, quasi-possessed, this is pre-Exorcist, obviously, but they've caught a vampire and they're about to destroy a vampire. Because we have seen... even Christopher Lee in the first Dracula movie, there's a snarl, that's like that kind of thing. But this is such a scene that we see over and over and over again, the kind of unfettered sexual and animalistic writhing vampire who's about to get staked. And I'm like, yeah, because we've come a long way from 1931.
They actually talk about this in the documentary on there, that this is the first living vampire staking in one of these movies.
Oh, right, where they're not just asleep in the coffin.
Right.
And
yeah, this is the first time they've done that. And I mean, this scene is great. These monks are marching her in, and they've got her by the arms, and she's fighting and screaming and snarling, and it's like, bring her in, put her on this table, hold her down.
Gordon's alive. Impetuous boy.
My impression is 100% Brian Blessed. There's no question about it.
It's Brian Blessed, and yes, Matt Berry does sneak in, because it's kind of a similar thing.
It is. Well, as soon as you take it to the comedy sort of route of it, like, oh, this vampire is totally gonna, that's when it goes Matt Berry. This sounds bang up your alley, Rick.
You know what I'm thinking? Android. Android. Of course. Sanj.
Yeah.
Oh,
Lucian Sanchez.
I can only say to our listeners, if you have not tracked down Garth Marenghi's Dark Place, the BBC, I don't know if it's BBC, but British sitcom from the early 2000s?
Yeah, early 2000s, yeah.
Oh my God.
You talk about something I had shipped over from England, by the way, is the box set of that, along with Man to Man with Dean Lerner.
Man to Man.
Yeah.
Yep. Great.
I have both of those DVDs, and I treasure them, because one of the best things are their in-character commentaries on the discs.
Of course.
So it is Garth Marenghi and Dean Lerner, and I can't think of the guy who plays Lucian Sanchez, what his name is, but it's Todd
it's gonna drive me
something.
crazy.
But they do commentaries, because the woman, of course, went missing and is presumed dead.
Yes. And they never resolve that, which I think is brilliant.
I'd say that's where she's buried. I mean, if she got a burial.
I'd say that's where she got buried. Oh, I can't do an impression of him. But yes, that's highly recommended.
Yeah.
It is, if you're a fan of British comedy, if you're a fan of horror stuff.
Cool it, Sanchez, or you get a knuckle supper.
Picking up the phone. Goodbye. Putting it back down again.
So they hold her down, and then Shandor stakes her once again, real low on the staking.
I was surprised,
right below the boob.
This scene is going, far for its time and place, and I'm like, I'm down for this. The only thing that takes me out of that scene is their weird propriety about, well, I'm about to stake a woman vampire, and it would be improper to put the stake point somewhere on an exposed part of the chest. Yeah. And I'm like, but that's where the heart is. If you're going, because Shandor stakes her under the boob. I'm like, well, that's clearly under her heart.
Yeah. I'm here to stake, not to grope.
What
if they did a turned angle and he stakes it up?
Sure.
That would have been a way around it, right? I'm fixing these movies now. It would have been weird. That we call this the Shandor move. we go down and then up into the heart.
They call this slipping of the old Shandor.
Don't look at me like that. It's not dirty. It just sounds like it.
But we do get more bright red-orange hammer blood here.
I love it, man. I love being in this world. It's just, it's fake as hell, and I love it.
So Charles has been, disgusted, and this is horrifying. But then Shandor goes, now look. And sure enough, with the stake in her, and she's been killed, she looks at Peace, and Charles, he goes, that wasn't her.
Yeah.
That was something that had used her as a shell, something dark. And so she's at peace now. And he's like, all right.
Look.
Sweet.
Look at her now. Why, she's alive. No. What? Where in the hell did you get that idea?
Look at her now. Yeah, you can totally see her. No, not. Come on. Yes, that's diaphanous. It's translucent. That's not what I was getting at.
I'm a monk. Did you really think that's what I was implying? She's your dead, formerly demonic possessed sister-in-law. You sick bastard.
Yeah, but I mean, she is hot.
It's true. She's got
Get
a
out of
killer
my
rack.
Out of my sight, Charles. You're disgusting.
You know what? I'll take on Dracula by myself. You sick, sick man. So then Ludwig comes for Helen and he goes, "Hey, Shandor told me to come." This is the third successful one of these.
No one on the set, no producer, no actor went up to Jimmy Sangster or Terrence Fisher and said, "Okay, you get maybe two. Maybe two."
And it's the second time it's worked on Diana alone.
This is the third time some third party comes in and says, "Oh, the person you're married to wants to see you in another place."
Yeah.
Jesus.
So he brings her to a room, which of course has Dracula in it, and Dracula locks the door. I love this Dracula move to be like, she comes in the room, Dracula shuts the door, locks it, and gives her like, well, I guess we're alone.
He does. She's about to kind of freak out, but he does the sort of like hypnotic.
Yeah.
He does a hand gesture. He's like, no.
Yeah.
And so she's like, okay, what's all this about? And he walks up to her. And
first move, get that cross off.
Yeah, he does a hand gesture for that. And she goes, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Hypnotized.
Do you think Christopher Lee was like, could I just tell her to take the cross off? No lines.
Nope.
No lines, Chris.
Remember, you're a evil thing. You're a symbol more than a being.
It is something we've talked about. It is baffling. It's not like Christopher Lee was some, muscle-bound lunkhead who couldn't act. He's a good actor. You can give him lines.
At this point, he had already done like 9 or 10 films for Hammer. Between him showing up in
Rasputin the Mad Monk, he's chit-chatting all over the place in that movie. Saying all kinds of weird shit.
There's no reason for a dialogueless Dracula.
No.
And I'm not sure I buy Jimmy Sangster's I didn't write him any dialogue. I'm not sure what the truth is.
I think, here's my guess, is that both are kind of true. Lee going, I'm not going to say this shit. This is awful. You must change it, Jimmy. Oh, well, if you don't like it, Chris, how about I just take out all your lines?
And that may have been something like that, or maybe he even said something about, look, I'll come back, I'll do your Dracula movie, I want to get this much. If you want me to say any of that stupid dialogue, it'll cost you this much.
Yeah.
And they probably said, no, that's okay, Chris. We'll just keep it down to you. You'll be in and out. 3 days of filming, no dialogue, just put the fangs in and the red.
And the thing about the movie, though, as bad as that is, Lee's such a fucking good actor that the performance still kind of works.
It still kind of works.
Oh, it's just, oh man, we were Peter crushing. Now we're, I don't have a pun for Christopher Lee, but we just love the dude.
We'll think of something.
Christopher Lee. That's off the top of my head.
We are leaning. No, we are. Oh, we'll think of something.
Yeah. There's something here. We have plenty more movies to come up with it.
Hey, listeners, why don't you write in with your suggestions?
Let us. Yeah, actually, I would. We previously have been Peter crushing. What are we feeling towards Christopher Lee that's in a pun fashion?
Other than sheer adoration for the man.
And you want to talk about the crushing on Lee? Things get kind of sexy right here. He has her take off her cross, and his move is he starts unbuttoning his shirt, and I'll say, I put my notepad down at this point and leaned in.
I know you did.
Tell me more.
Now, this is something, as you said before, something from the original novel that didn't show up and hasn't shown up in any of the other film adaptations. To point, even though in 1931's Dracula, they have Mina describe this, they just don't show it.
Right.
She's like, he came and he drew blood and he made me. And you're like, okay. But here is Dracula saying, I'm digging you something fierce, Blondie. So and again, weird dialogue. No wonder Christopher Lee didn't want to say it.
I'm digging you something fierce, baby.
He opens his shirt and he uses his pinky
I love
nail.
This. I like this
pinky
a lot.
nail and just slices down the middle of his chest.
Yeah.
Line of blood. And he's basically like, there you go, baby.
Yeah. And he kind of holds her head there to it. And it's very sexual and disturbing. And I would have loved it even more if she had come back with a face full of blood. Because you think about the horror then to see the animalistic aspect of that when Charles comes in and is like, good Lord.
Well, that's the whole thing, is that there is such an element to the vampire story, specifically Dracula, that is about seduction. And I brought this up before too. It's about the corruption of innocence. So yes, the cuckoldry of a husband or fiance coming in, and here's this sexier, dark guy who's been around for centuries, and your wife is totally into him to the point that she's drinking his blood.
Yeah.
That's a devastating.
I would like him to bust in and go, oh my God. Oh, no, wait. She's just drinking his blood. Whew, I thought she was blowing him.
Honestly, had you been a little lower, this could have been a problem. But I don't care about the whole drink as much as you like it.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. No, what actually happens is he calls for her, and this is another Dracula going, oh, shit.
And
then he busts out a window. He punches out a window and picks her up, and he's like, I'm going to take this back to my place.
Yeah, exactly. And then doesn't he kind of kick the window out? Like, get the fuck out of my way because I'm holding this lady.
No window will hold Count Dracula. And he smashes out the window and then carries her to the carriage, which takes off. That it's what's the butler guy who has, or Clove, who I like to describe as Dracula's butler.
Sure, he's the riffraff.
Exactly. Yeah,
nice to see you now.
He's 100% the riffraff of this movie. And they take off, and they take off. And then I thought initially, like, are we going to get into a chase here? No, not yet.
Not quite, but I can only say movies in which Dracula gets in a coach always make me concerned, because in none of them has this been a good part of a Dracula film.
But can we talk about the fact that he has to get back in the coffin that a cross was put in, and they don't ever deal with that?
That's correct.
He put the cross in there so Dracula wouldn't be able to go back to the coffin, yet later we see that he's gotten back in his coffin, but we don't see a scene where anyone removes that cross.
Let's just give them the benefit of the doubt, and Dracula convinced hypnotically the nice blonde lady to take the cross out of there.
It's true, because she wouldn't be affected by it, because she's not... Yeah. Clove's like, oh, my master wouldn't like this.
You know, of all the things he likes in a coffin, a cross is way at the bottom of the list. I'd say it's not even on the list.
So so they take off, and Shandor's like, don't worry, they'll have to get in the coffin, so she won't really be in any danger until sunset tomorrow. And he's saying all this, I do like this, while putting together a rifle.
Yes.
I'm like, that's right, we're gonna get that Dracula. Click, 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 clack.
Of course, I know a lot about vampires. I don't know I'm loading a rifle.
Well, he says, and because he loads the rifle and he gives it to Charles and says, "You'll need this." And he says, "Well, won't you be the one who says it?" He goes, "Well, look, I can shoot animals and I can kill vampires, but we might run into other trouble. And let's just say the monastery kind of forbids me to, murder people. But you, man, take this gun and go nuts."
I don't even care if it's Clove. Just, you see someone that you don't like.
Like a guy who looked at you funny a few years ago, just take a shot.
You know what I just found out as I was scrolling around? Barbara Shelley literally just died.
Like, as we were talking? I'm sorry. I've just received news.
I apologize to our listeners. I hate to break in like this. No, on
I
January
just got a
4th.
call. January 4th
of this year. Yeah, so
Oh,
very, very recent. So,
oh, well, R.I.P. there, because she's great in
yeah,
this movie.
she was great. Yeah.
And she
And
seemed delightful in the Shout Factory documentary about this movie.
I would like to watch that
Yeah,
documentary.
yeah, it's very good. So they take off and they chase after Dracula's carriage, and now we just have a full on them on horseback, the bad guys in a carriage chase sequence.
And a
lot of oh, they're up there. We're almost upon them. Yeah. There's a lot of that. Yeah, there's a lot of that. And then they're like,
I'd say the score was pretty good for this one too.
Yeah. I mean,
I liked it. It was occasionally melodramatic, but that's a little bit of what I wanted.
The fact that I didn't notice it obtrusively is a good sign. I'll say that for sure. Because some of these you're like, what am I listening to?
Exactly. This one worked okay.
Everything fit. It made. I mean, the movie flowed with the sound. So they and at a certain point, Charles says, "We'll never catch them," and Shandor, yeah, goes,
"We'll cut across here."
Yeah, we'll flank them. And they do. They get right in front of them. They stop and they get right in front of the carriage, and they're like, "Oh, you go no farther, evildoers!" So I like that Clove does a like fake out where he's like, "Okay, I'm putting the reins down," and then goes to grab his knife to throw it. And I'll give Charles this. He just blows him away.
Doesn't like, put your hand down. No, he just takes him out.
Gets that knife and shoots him. And it's like, good, you murdered the man, not me. And that is the story we stick to. We make that abundantly clear later.
You're the one going to hell, and I straight to heaven.
I merely was an accomplice to a murder. Your prints are all over that rifle now. So yeah, they kill him. And Charles shoots him, and then the carriage just what happens here? I can't remember what happens because the carriage takes off again. Yeah, it takes off on its own. That's right, it takes off on its own again, but then pretty quickly hits another big rock. And when it hits this rock, Dracula's coffin shoots out of the back of this thing and skids onto some ice. And I did, as soon as the ice came in, I thought the same thing. I'm like, it has never in any way felt cold enough for that this pond or whatever, this moat at the castle has frozen over. All I
can say is, if this was the way this film was scripted, if this was already in place when they started rolling film, I, as Terrence Fisher, would have included some reference, some offhanded statement of one character or another, or a close-up shot, or somebody going, "Man, it's cold up here in the mountain. Look, that's a bit." I mean, just anything to call attention to it, because here we're like going, "Wait, what? That's ice?"
Well, let me say this: what if instead of it hitting a rock, it hit some ice and skidded out the carriage because they've gotten to a place where it's cold enough that there's ice all around?
Sure. But you also, they needed to dress the set with money they didn't have with a little snow.
Yeah.
Because just an iced over moat, especially, we see that's fairly thick.
Yeah. It really threw me. I was like, I didn't even recognize it as ice initially because number one, it doesn't look like ice.
It's completely opaque. So you're like, all right.
Yeah.
But still, yes, the coffin goes skittering across the ice.
Which I did enjoy, just seeing that thing fly out the back of it and go and come to a stop. Dracula went for a ride, baby.
And supposedly, night is about to... Wait, is night about to fall?
Oh, night's very much about to fall because they have like seconds before Dracula's bursting out of this thing.
Yeah, but Dracula's... I mean, it hasn't been hours since they were at the monastery, so I'm not quite sure...
I have no
how
idea.
This timeline.
I have no idea how this timeline works out because.
All right. Regardless,
they go into the carriage. They find Diana in one of the coffins, and they're like, "Good, she's
But
safe."
she's safe. Yeah, she
Yeah.
hasn't been turned.
And
It's like,
Charles
oh,
says,
that.
"I'll hike down there and take care of Dracula."
Yeah.
Which, why is he the one to deal with Dracula? That makes no sense. But anyway,
Well, Dracula killed his brother.
that's right. He does say that earlier, that I have to be the
Look,
one to
I
kill
know
him.
that your family, is your family, but I'm just saying that in, like, for instance, if Dracula killed my brother,
Yeah. You're taking him out. You're finishing the job yourself.
I'd have to do it. I'd have to do
I'm
it.
staking this bastard, all right? He's going down.
So yeah, Charles is gonna head down and take care of
But I
Dracula.
love the way he plays it too. He's like, careful on the ice.
Yeah, careful on the ice.
Easy now. And apparently, in the time it takes him to carefully walk across this ice, Shandor has a thing where he's like, "You must go quickly. The sun, it's going down."
Right.
And wouldn't you know it, as soon as he gets to the coffin, Dracula bursts right out of this thing.
I did like the bursting out.
I did too, because it's Dracula doing something cool.
Yeah, and this is the
powerful.
last cool thing.
And then they proceed to, I'm going to go ahead and use the word tussle.
I would have said wrestle, but yeah.
That works too.
No, it's not wrestling. No, they are wrestling.
And it's another thing where I'm like, shouldn't Dracula be more powerful than this? This is not as cool as the Lee Cushing fight from Horror of Dracula.
As much as I like the concept of Van Helsing physically clashing with Dracula, because it is Cushing and Lee.
Well, and Cushing really sells you on it. He seems like he's got the strength within him to take on this immortal monster.
I've never bought it, simply because this immortal monster has the strength of like 10 men. So by no means should anyone.
I only like Van Helsing doing
it. Unless they're holding a crucifix, no one should be able to just like go toe to toe. Dracula could literally just pick him up one-handed and toss him.
Well, we already saw him do that earlier. We literally
Yes.
saw him toss this guy across the room earlier.
Yes, we did.
But I guess he's a little sleepy and a little groggy from his nap.
And let's not forget, there's running water under that ice.
Oh, well, I won't forget, because Shandor is smart enough to go, "I'll shoot the ice."
Wait a minute. Yes. Well, no, first, I think he's like, because Diana grabs the rifle. She's going to, and he's like, no, you'll hit Charles. And she does take a shot, which goes into the ice.
That's what it is. And that's where some water starts to bubble up out of it. He's like, "Hey!
Hey, wait a minute.
Let me see that thing." And he just starts firing at this ice, and it starts cracking apart. And I'll tell you what I really don't like. Dracula looking nervous as the ice goes out from under him. He's like, "Whoa, uh-oh."
I don't like scared Dracula. I never like scared Dracula. I like a Dracula being enraged that he is losing the upper hand, that someone may be winning. It should be rage, but fear of like, oh no, I'm like,
well, even like in Horror of Dracula, they get into a tussle. Van Helsing holds his own, but he really is only able to take Dracula out by running and leaping on those curtains and opening up the sun to him. Dracula probably would have killed him if not for that move. So here the idea that just to see, and so Dracula goes down like, I've been bested. Here it's more like, uh-oh, whoa, boy.
Yeah.
It goes on for a while as he's slipping and sliding on the sides. He's like, no, just get your footing, Dracula. Just, no.
It's not a good look. And it's, and as you say, they drag it out too much, but it's sort of him on... It's obviously not ice, but they've tried to make it look like it's. Ice, they've shot in kind of a circle to where this chunk of it that has Dracula on it has come loose, and so he's trying to precariously balance himself to keep from going into the water. He
doesn't just, I don't know, jump off of it onto another part of ice or something.
Can I bring up another point, John?
Sure.
Why does he not turn into a bat or mist?
Yes. Have we seen him? Lee hasn't done that, though, has he? I can't remember.
No, but in Brides of Dracula, yes, on the bats.
Yeah,
and
that guy did,
Same universe. Dracula has that ability whether we've seen it or not. So
Right.
I am not buying the
No, it's just
when he
like,
could turn immaterial or into a flying rodent.
because I'm just watching it at this point, shaking my head as I watch Dracula, because and he slowly starts to he's like halfway in the water. He's like, no, 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 no.
And then there's a close-up of his hand clawing at the ice, and then that's it. Then he goes under.
And we see him under the ice, and he's like,
Oh, what we see is I mean, I was thinking they probably could have used like a dummy head from the makeup. They have to make a life mask. But I was looking at that because it's supposed to be Dracula's dead face under the ice. It doesn't look anything like Christopher Lee.
Nope, not even close.
I was like, did somehow Dracula falling into it cause a totally unrelated corpse to rise?
Oh, that's where he hid that body.
But similar to the other Hammer films, they're just like Universal, not too into giving any epilogue. So this essentially, we don't see like Charles running back to Diana and saying, "We're safe," or "We should have listened to Helen," or whatever. Instead,
now
it's
do you believe me about that castle?
Instead, you see the face under the ice that's supposed to be Christopher Lee, and then it's the end.
Yep. Somebody will dig him out of this ice in the next movie, I'm sure.
Do you think?
I have a good feeling.
Or would they abandon continuity like the Frankenstein movie?
Well, that's what I thought was interesting, that this movie started with a previously on when we've already abandoned continuity, yet 8 years later we want to make sure this is a true sequel.
Yeah, I don't know what that's about.
Weird choice. So anyway, that's Dracula Prince of Darkness. Do we recommend this movie? I'm having a tough time on this one.
Oh, well, here's the thing. I often will be the person who recommends movies I know aren't great because of their historical significance.
Yeah.
And this is Christopher Lee's second outing. It's his return to the character. It has a couple of really good scenes. It does. And a solid cast, including a solid stand-in for Van Helsing that we both enjoyed.
Yeah, definitely.
So it is a weak recommend.
I'm there too. I have a recommend with some caveats that you should be aware. You should know what you're in for when you're going into this, because
it's slow. There's logic lapses, and not a great out for our Count.
Lord,
and some of the worst dialogue they ever gave him.
Yeah,
as in none.
Yep.
Christopher Lee, great actor, great voice. Let's not use that.
Oh, no, of course not.
What a shame. But anyway, I was still glad to be back in Dracula Land because I love Dracula. And every time we veer away from him, I'm a little heartbroken.
Well, we're veering away from him again next week. But
yes, we are.
We're going back to our friend Peter Cushing.
Yes, we are.
That's our man. And this time...
Because he's doing what?
Well, this time, Frankenstein, he's made a few men. This time, he's decided to create woman.
Holy hell.
Yeah.
Sign me up. Yeah, 1967's.
Yeah. Frankenstein created woman.
Yeah, the Hammer for a little while here is spacing out their classic monsters. They're still doing lots of horror flicks, but yeah, this is like another year between no Mummy, no Dracula, no obviously no werewolf, but yeah, so they waited another year to bring back Cushing as Frankenstein. I'm down for that shit, though.
Absolutely. Yeah, looking forward to that one, which I do remember this movie, and we'll see. We'll see what we think about it in modern day now.
I'm not sure there's going to be another classic that we just go, this is the best film.
No.
I'm not sure as we go through the rest of the Hammers.
I mean,
there's always going to be something to enjoy.
I mean, I fucking love Captain Kronos Vampire Hunter.
Oh, that may be, but again, that's been years for me too. So I think you may be right, and we may end up trumpeting.
That to me is the late Hammer gem.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah. So,
all right,
we'll talk about Frankenstein Created Woman next week on the show. But that's going to wrap things up for this week's episode of Campbell and Jones Meet the Monsters. I'm John Campbell.
I'm Brendan Jones.
And remember, there are such things as monsters.
It was a good take, John. Can you do it now just with your eyes? No dialogue. Just get. That's what we want.